Chapter 1559. Apparently, the tombstone had deliberately set up a trap, waiting for Li Zongjio to jump into it. Therefore, when Li Zongjio landed, the monsters that were lying in ambush were all activated. Therefore, Li Zongjio's unparalleled sword did not stop moving. He waved it. Immediately, the unparalleled sword released a powerful sword chi, instantly killing all the monsters that were close to it. Bang, bang, bang. These monsters were also easily cut in half. However, they quickly came back to life. Go Wushuang! Huo Wushuang jumped out of the unparalleled sword, and with a trace of fire, she rushed toward the monsters in front of her. In an instant, the fire lingered. She burned all the monsters in front of her. They turned into black ashes and fell to the ground. Then, Huo Wushuang also landed in front of Li Zongjio. There's something strange about these things. Even Huo Wushuang could feel the strangeness of these things. It was obvious that although these monsters had been blasted into powder, they were still alive. Suddenly, Li Zongjio saw that the powder on the ground seemed to turn over and become a living thing. Under such circumstances, it quickly rushed toward Li Zongjio. It was as if the black ashes had turned into a ball, approaching Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio blasted out a palm, and the powder was blown away. When the powder spread out from Li Zongjio's hand again, Li Zongjio had a bad feeling. Oh no! Immediately, he saw that the powder seemed to have grown eyes and wings. It gathered into a small ball and quickly rushed toward Wan Yulan. He did not expect that the target of these things was not Li Zongjio, but Wan Yulan. Wan Yulan? He did not expect that these things were so smart. They did not go for the strongest Li Zongjio, but went for her, who was weaker. Spirit barrier. In fact, Wan Yulan was no ordinary person. Even in such a situation, she did not panic. She quickly released her own power and condensed her mental power into a force in front of her. This was an invisible barrier that nothing could penetrate. Don't use your mental power, Li Zongjio said, but it was already too late. When the powder came into contact with Wan Yulan's psychic energy, it was like fire coming into contact with gunpowder, instantly igniting. Instantly, Wan Yulan's spiritual power increased by tens of thousands of times. It formed an extremely strong spiritual storm. When the storm came, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Li Zongjio also felt a strong pressure. The opponent's strength had obviously reached the Xiantian level in an instant. Boom! Li Zongjio was sent flying by the sudden surge of mental strength, and his body fell to the ground. Something that hadn't happened for a long time had actually happened. He was injured. The power that appeared in an instant just now also injured Li Zongjio. Cough, cough. Li Zongjio spat out a mouthful of golden blood. Now, Li Zongjio's physique had changed. Even his blood had turned golden. With such a strong physique, he could withstand a stronger impact. Wan Yulan in front seemed to be entangled by countless sandstorms. She was reborn in this sandstorm. Boom! Wan Yulan could no longer be described as herself at this moment. The latter's eyes released a dark light. It seemed that all the power and mysteries were related to darkness. Suddenly, Wan Yulan's eyes shook. Suddenly, the aura within a radius of 10,000 miles shook. Boom! Like an extremely strong storm, it quickly rushed toward Li Zongjio. In an instant, she actually activated the power of heaven and earth within 10,000 miles. It was like an energy tide that belonged to the essence of heaven and earth. In an instant, it swept toward Li Zongjio and attacked. As for Li Zongjio himself, he was also rapidly using his own will. Forged into a solid wall. Boom! And just as Li Zongjio's will was formed, it was the tombstone hidden in the tomb. But suddenly he rushed out. In the blink of an eye, it released a huge black light that was tens of thousands of feet long. Then, it suddenly fell towards Li Zongjio. Oh no! Boom! In an instant, Li Zongjio used all his strength to send out the unparalleled sword. Meanwhile, he himself was being suppressed by this nameless tombstone. And what was used was the power of Li Zongjio's will. Using Li Zongjio's will to suppress Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio had never seen such a powerful opponent. Who exactly was the opponent? In the unparalleled sword, Huo Wushuang now had the strength of an absolute saint. Naturally, he could move freely, which was already very powerful. And after Huo Wushuang was sent out, he understood that Li Zhongjie was in a very dangerous situation. Li Zhongjie was directly trapped by the opponent. The only person who could help Li Zhongjie was Qi Yanran. But Qi Yanran's strength was only on par with Li Zhongjie's. If he went to find Qi Yanran, it might not be effective. Black Sea. Huo Wushuang immediately flew on his sword. He flew quickly in the direction of the dark area. Now, it seemed that only the Black Sea Lord could save Li Zhongjie. It was Li Zhongjie's first time being trapped by someone. The power in the surroundings all came from him. How could he break his defense with his own strength? This was impossible. The opponent was really smart. At this moment, Wan Yulan landed and looked at Li Zhongjie with disdain. She raised her hand and piled up countless bones that belonged to the evil forest on Li Zhongjie's body. In the end, it was directly made into a tomb. With the addition of this tombstone, coincidentally, it was also a complete tomb. However, Li Zhongjie could only be trapped and could not get out. Obviously, the opponent had used a powerful strength to directly take away Wan Yulan's will. It was obviously impossible for the opponent to take over his strength. So, he could only settle for the next best thing, which was to find Wan Yulan. In such a clear-headed situation, he directly poured his own strength into the opponent's body and sealed the opponent's will to take over the body. Even Li Zhongjie could not do this. This meant that the opponent's strength was far above Li Zhongjie's. However, the latter was obviously not in his best condition. If he was in his best condition, he would not have trapped Li Zhongjie. He would have directly killed him. Even though Li Zhongjie wasn't sure what was going on, he still felt a sense of crisis. Since that was the case, he decided to give the unparalleled sword away. At the very least, he had to have a backup plan. After all, Wushuang did not seem to be of any use here. The opponent's strength was not something that Huo Wushuang could compare to. He was trapped in front of an iron wall built by his own will. Li Zhongjie was actually unable to retract his willpower. What kind of strange move was this? However, looking at Wan Yulan's last eyes, it was obvious that something was very wrong. This mysterious existence had probably taken over Wan Yulan's body and would soon sweep across the entire continent. With these strange tomb monsters. And the Soul Stone. Soul Stone? Li Zhongjie thought of this Soul Stone. Although Li Zhongjie only discovered a little when he first explored, he thought it was a strange method, so he did not delve into the use of this thing. Therefore, Li Zhongjie also needed to understand this Soul Stone. What was the situation? Previously, Li Zhongjie had indeed encountered some formidable opponents. However, in Li Zhongjie's opinion, these opponents were nothing to be afraid of. However, this one was different. This person was very smart. This made Li Zhongjie feel that it was quite troublesome. He was not afraid of the opponent being strong, but he was afraid of the opponent being smart. Li Zhongjie even suspected that he had fallen into the other party's trap from the very beginning in order to trap him. Or rather, the opponent wanted to do something very inhumane to him. This made Li Zhongjie directly worried. This guy was really quite powerful. If he wanted to destroy the entire Xingwu continent, Li Zhongjie was not worried. With the existence of a powerhouse like the Black Sea Overlord, these people would not watch the Xingwu continent be destroyed. There must be a reason why the human race could survive on the Xingwu continent for so long. However, Li Zhongjie was worried about Luoxia City. Therefore, he absolutely could not be trapped here for too long. Immediately, Li Zhongjie also took out the Soul Stone. After looking at it, he did not find anything strange. Only by absorbing the power in this Soul Stone would he be able to. However, according to the example that Wan Yulan mentioned before, those who absorbed the power of the Soul Stone were all controlled in the end, and their murderous nature was even triggered. However, Li Zhongjie was quite confident in his strength. Immediately, Li Zhongjie also began to absorb the power in this Soul Stone. Now, although Li Zhongjie could not leave, it was also impossible for the opponent to enter. First, they had to break Li Zhongjie's willpower defense. Li Zhongjie was confident. It was not an easy task to break through his innate level 5 defense. According to the previous situation, the opponent's strength was only at the innate level 7. Chapter 1560. Gale City. Qi Yanran landed on the ground. For half a month, there was no news about Li Zongjio. For Qi Yanran, this was a very unusual thing. For this reason, Qi Yanran specially went to the sacred martial realm. However, there was no sign of Li Zongjio in the sacred martial realm. Qi Yanran immediately realized that something was wrong. Therefore, she used the White Deer Mansion's intelligence network. She collected all the information about Li Zongjio. Although Evil Lord was invincible, the White Deer Mansion was an intelligence agency. Therefore, they only collected information, regardless of whether you were invincible or not. Therefore, the final news appeared in Gale City. Half a month ago, Evil Lord's name appeared in Gale City. It was said that Li Zongjio and a mercenary group entered the evil forest together. They also encountered the Black Ghost Army. Recently, there were also tragedies related to the Soul Stones in the Heike dynasty. Therefore, the imperial court of the Heike dynasty quickly integrated their forces and completely blocked the Soul Stones. After obtaining them, they sent them directly to the headquarters of the Alchemist Guild. Under the refining of the true fire of dozens of alchemists, the Soul Stones were destroyed. Were the materials of these Soul Stones also incomparable? They were very strong. These high-level alchemists also needed to constantly concentrate their strength. It would take them several days to refine a Soul Stone. To be able to effectively control the Soul Stone within half a month was a very difficult task for the Heichu dynasty. But at the same time, it was also a very difficult task. One could imagine how much resistance they would encounter in the process. However, the Heichu dynasty also relied on their strong courage to deal with this matter. But now, there were a lot of hidden dangers everywhere. Therefore, more time was needed. Gale City had also become a key city under supervision. One had to know that Gale City was the closest city to the Forest of Evil. If a Soul Stone were to appear, it would appear there first. Today, the City Lord of Gale City had received an order early in the morning. There was an important person coming, and he must receive this person well. Otherwise, not only would he lose his position as City Lord, but he might also lose his head. Therefore, early in the morning, Jin Wuji, the castellan who held the power of life and death in Gale City, had been waiting there. Above the sky, a beautiful figure descended. When Jin Wuji saw this person, he was shocked. Although he had already mentally prepared himself, he was still completely shocked when he saw the person in front of him. He had never imagined that it would actually be this person. But, "My lord, Gale City's City Lord, Jin Wuji, awaits your arrival." Jin Wuji knelt down. He had been lucky enough to meet Qi Yanran before. That was during the meeting between the three dynasties. However, at that time, Jin Wuji was just a follower of the Heike dynasty. He could not participate in the meeting. He was only able to survive because of Qi Yanran and Li Zongjio. Recently, Jin Wuji's performance had been outstanding. Therefore, he was temporarily transferred to Gale City to carry out the ruthless means. The matter of preventing the Soul Stone was extremely serious. It must be done by someone who was tough enough. If it was too soft, there would be no way. Therefore, Jin Wuji was transferred here. He did not expect that he could meet such a high and mighty person like Qi Yanran here. "You are the City Lord here. I want to see all the members of the Gale mercenary group," Qi Yanran said. Before coming, the White Deer Mansion was only visited by the imperial court of the Heike dynasty. But Qi Yanran came faster. It was estimated that this guy had just received the order, and he had already arrived. "I'll go and gather them." "My lord, please come with me to the hall to rest for a while." Qi Yanran nodded. Was Li Zongjio in danger? Qi Yanran was not worried about Li Zongjio's life. However, maybe Li Zongjio was in danger now and needed someone to help him to ensure his safety. She needed to get out of danger as soon as possible. Although she was anxious, she had to stay calm at this critical moment. Jin Wuji immediately sent people to gather the members of the Gale mercenary group. They happened to be in the city now. After all, the masters of this mercenary group were all experienced in hunting monsters in the tomb. If they went out, they might get the Soul Stone. Then, if they went a long way and deliberately bypassed Gale City, it would be difficult to stop them. Therefore, Jin Wuji specially ordered people to keep these people in the city. It happened that these people of the Gale mercenary group had received a huge sum of money. Now, they did not need to take risks at all. As long as they made good use of the money, they could live a comfortable life. Soon, the members of the Gale mercenary group were summoned. They were all brought to the governor's mansion. Jin Wuji told Qi Yanran that they were all here. Qi Yanran immediately got up and went. She came to these people. I want to talk to them alone. Qi Yanran sent Jin Wuji away? The news about Li Zongjio was more or less a secret in Jianghu. How could these ordinary people know about it? After all, it would be inconvenient. There were 25 people in the Gale mercenary group. Previously, 15 of them were recuperating in Qin Yu's mansion. Now that they had money, all their illnesses and injuries were directly treated. After that, the Gale mercenary group had been discussing how to use this huge sum of money. Fortunately, in the face of this huge sum of money, everyone kept calm. Moreover, the money was distributed equally. It was mainly because they had gone through many life and death situations together. As for whether it was money or not, there was really no need to worry about it. It was already quite difficult to find such a group of people who valued friendship so much. Now that they were suddenly summoned by the governor of Gale City, and their attitude was unusually firm, it showed that this matter was not simple. Everyone was not clear about the situation. However, they heard from the people who came that a big shot wanted to see them. Therefore he summoned them here. Immediately, everyone was waiting anxiously. Qi Yanran walked in. She appeared in front of the members of the Gale mercenary group. You are. When the old commander saw Qi Yanran, he was stunned. His eyes were full of shock and his heart was shocked. He even thought that he was old and dizzy. Master? But Master Qi. Qi Yanran did not have a famous nickname. She was not as Chunibyu as Li Zongjio. Even because of Li Zongjio, Qi Yanran rarely showed up. But she was very well known in Jianghu. Those who knew Li Zongjio must know Qi Yanran. In this world, how many people had not heard of Li Zongjio's name? Chapter 1561. Therefore, when everyone in Gale City saw Qi Yanran, they were obviously shocked. After all, they had just met Evil Lord some time ago. And now, they were summoned by Evil Lord's wife again. What kind of luck did their mercenary group have? Let me ask you, what happened between Li Zongjio and you in the evil forest? You have to answer truthfully, not a word wrong. Qi Yanran said. Now there were too many versions outside, and it was strange. After all, in this kind of retelling, there were often people who exaggerated. When the old regiment commander heard Qi Yanran's words, he knew that something must have happened. That was why she asked this question. Immediately, the old commander did not dare to have the slightest hesitation and told her everything he knew. From the moment they met Evil Lord to the time they parted. Qi Yanran also listened carefully. The old commander also knew how to behave appropriately. For such an expert, any exaggeration could be seen through at a glance. Now that he had spoken about this matter, he had no choice but to do so. Then, of course, it had to be carried out exactly as it was. Wan Yulan? In other words, in the end, only Wan Yulan and Li Zongjio were together, and you have also met the mysterious tombstone? Qi Yanran said. Yes, we were all there, and every word is accurate. The old commander hurriedly said. Sir, can you lead the way again? Qi Yanran said. Obviously, Li Zongjio's disappearance must have something to do with this tombstone. Then, as long as they found this mysterious tombstone, they would definitely be able to find the relationship with Li Zongjio. As for Wan Yulan, she was also missing. They also received the news a few days ago. Wan Yulan also disappeared. Until now, she had not returned. However, the Marquis of Wan Yulan's residence did not use their connections to search for Wan Yulan. Even now, the Black Nether Army was still in the small town, waiting for Wan Yulan's return. Perhaps in the eyes of the Black Nether Army, it was absolutely safe for the general to stay with Li Zongjio. If Li Zongjio wanted to hurt Wan Yulan, Li Zongjio would not be able to stop him. In that case, no one in the world would be able to resist it. If Li Zongjio couldn't protect Wan Yulan, then who else in the world could protect Wan Yulan? Therefore, the Black Nether army was also very comfortable as they camped in this small town. They ate and drank well, trained normally, and received some information. This guard lasted for half a month. "I'm willing to serve you, sir," the old regiment commander said. Since Qi Yanran had spoken, how could he refuse? If he refused, it would definitely not do him any good. When such a person spoke, there would not even be a chance to refuse. After all, the consequences of refusing such a person like Qi Yanran were not something they could bear. Even if Qi Yanran did not care about it, there would definitely be someone who would come to clean up such a situation. Therefore, the old regiment commander agreed very straightforwardly. "We'll go too." The people of the Fierce Wind Mercenary Corps also said one after another, although going again would put them in danger. However, they couldn't just stand by and watch their old regiment commander take the risk alone. "You guys stay in the city. Your regiment commander will be back soon." Qi Yanran pressed one hand on the old regiment commander's shoulder. Then, the two figures directly disappeared from where they stood. The people of the Fierce Wind Mercenary Corps were stunned. They looked around and did not even open the doors and windows. They disappeared into thin air just like that. Is this the legendary teleportation? What a powerful ability. What kind of cultivation does one have to be able to do this? Obviously, these people of the Fierce Wind Mercenary Corps. They were also stunned by the strength shown by Qi Yanran. In fact, Qi Yanran's strength had always been a mystery in Jianghu. After all, Li Zongjio would take care of everything, not to mention this kind of thing, Li Zongjio would take care of it. Naturally, Qi Yanran did not need to do anything. But she was able to become Evil Lord's woman. How could her strength be ordinary? When the old regiment commander saw the things around him again, he had already arrived outside the evil forest. He was immediately shocked. So fast. Fierce Wind City was at least 100 miles away from the evil forest. The distance was 180 miles, but in the blink of an eye, they had already arrived. This was probably the origin of the phrase, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. The old regiment commander also took Qi Yanran and walked quickly into the evil forest. The old commander himself could also see that Qi Yanran seemed to be very anxious, but he was a lowly person and did not dare to ask too much. "Go straight, don't take a detour." Qi Yanran felt that there seemed to be a mental strength in the sky above the evil forest, disturbing the mental strength. So Qi Yanran could not use her mental strength in such a place. If the influence was deep enough, it might also have a great impact on her mental strength, which was not worth the loss. But the old regiment commander did not hesitate. He directly took Qi Yanran in the direction of the mysterious tombstone. Along the way, some tomb monsters and the like appeared. They did not even have time to meet Qi Yanran and were directly killed by Qi Yanran. The old regiment commander's heart trembled when he saw this. Sure enough, this was the reason why he could not offend a woman. She did not even blink when she attacked. She directly shattered them. Even their soul stones had been shattered by the impact. The movement was loud. Wan Yulan, who was cultivating in the tomb, also opened her eyes at this moment. At this moment, Wan Yulan's appearance was gradually changing. It could be seen that Wan Yulan's hair had directly turned white. "If you want to play, then I'll play with you." Wan Yulan bent her finger and flicked. Suddenly, this force seemed to split the space in front of her. Immediately, countless figures rushed out from this crack. Boom! 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 These two monsters were also crazily surging. Their movements were fast and their attacks were sharp. They were powerful. Qi Yanran and the old regiment commander saw that the ground in front of them was shaking rapidly. "So," Qi Yanran said. The old regiment commander also looked at the situation in front of him following this fluctuation. In front of them, an overwhelming number of tomb monsters appeared. And they were different from the tomb monsters they had seen before. These two monsters were also holding a tombstone in their hands. I have never seen such a level of monster before. Level 10 monsters. the old regiment commander exclaimed. The scene in front of them was spectacular. Seeing this, the level 10 monsters rushed out one after another. This was for the old regiment commander. Even if there was only one of them, it was enough to destroy a dynasty. The monsters raised the tombstones in their hands and smashed them in the direction of Qi Yanren. Obviously, they were here to kill the two of them. Boom! Boom! A strong force attacked. Qi Yanren waved her hand and defeated the opponent with the desolate heaven essence. Chapter 1562. Countless tombstones were smashed into pieces. But at the same time, these smashed tombstones turned into extremely sharp and powerful hidden weapons. They instantly rushed toward the two of them. Qi Yanren waved her hand. A wave of yuan power wrapped these flying stones and sent them back to where they came from. Whoosh! These level 10 monsters were hit one after another. Even their bodies were on the verge of collapsing in an instant. Bang! They instantly rolled to the ground. But soon, these level 10 monsters got up again. Divine light! Qi Yanren flicked her finger. Suddenly, a ray of light was released. These level 10 monsters that could destroy the world were killed on the ground. After falling to the ground, they couldn't be resurrected. Obviously, they were completely killed by the 5-colored divine light. But there were too many of them. Soon they rushed in front of them. For Qi Yanren, this scene was also an extremely difficult choice. It was obvious that Li Zongjio had been trapped by the other party. If she continued to move forward, she would definitely be able to find Li Zongjio. But those people outside the forest would also suffer. Many of the level 10 monsters had completely overtaken Qi Yanren. Their target was not Qi Yanren, but the outside world. They rushed out and wantonly destroyed. That was their true goal. Many monsters also rushed toward Qi Yanren, but the monsters near Qi Yanren were also smashed by the desolate heaven essence. But in the process, they had to protect the old people around them. Because of this, they slowed down Qi Yanren. Damn it! Qi Yanren's eyes were filled with anger. Suddenly, a wave of air burst out, killing all the level 10 monsters within 100 meters. These level 10 monsters were basically at the Supreme Master level. There were mid-stage Supreme Master and late-stage Supreme Master. There were even existences equivalent to the Supreme Master level. But these monsters were also killed by Qi Yanren. After releasing this move, Qi Yanren directly took the old commander with her. Her figure directly rose into the air and rushed out of the evil forest. He placed the old commander in a small town by the border. It wasn't until the old leader of the Fierce Wind Mercenary Corps steadied himself that he was deeply shocked. Even the shock he felt just now was still lingering in his mind for a long time. It had never died out. When he reappeared, the old commander instantly woke up. His entire body quivered. What kind of scene had he just witnessed with his own eyes? Although he didn't have the chance to make a move, even if he did, it wouldn't hurt at all. However, just looking at it with his own eyes was enough to make his blood boil. In front of Qi Yanren, those level 10 monsters were like dough that could be kneaded. He easily smashed these powerful level 10 monsters into smithereens. When I got back to the town, looking at the evil forest in the distance, it was as if there was a dark cloud that was forcefully covering over, as if it was going to devour everything. His aura could swallow mountains and rivers. The Black Nether army that was stationed in the small town discovered this situation. Without any hesitation, they began to organize themselves. Furthermore, they had also set up a defensive line. They were soldiers. Although this small town was poor and remote, it was still their country. As long as they were within the boundaries of this country, as soldiers, they had an absolute obligation to protect. Otherwise, it would be a disgrace to this set of armor. Quickly set up a defensive line. The rest of you, assist the people in evacuating. Just by looking at the surging power on the other side, one could tell that it was definitely not simple. From afar, they could also sense the suffocating aura. Any human being would be terrified to the extreme. By the time they could see clearly, they realized that these monsters were also unprecedentedly powerful. Their auras shocked them. Everyone also felt that it was as if the end of the world had arrived. Immediately, everyone began to flee frantically. They wanted to completely escape from this place. However, the Black Nether Army was under such a strong threat of death. They continued to stand guard. However, in everyone's mind, there was only one thought. That was the end. They had never expected such a ferocious force to attack. It was as if it could destroy heaven and earth. It was hard to believe, and they even felt despair. Black Nether Army, listen up. Behind us is our home. In front of us are man-eating monsters. If we retreat, these monsters will destroy our home and eat our family. What should we do? The leader of the Black Nether Army roared. His aura was boiling. His blood was boiling? The 2,000 Black Nether Army roared in unison. Their momentum was vast, like a sharp sword, almost directly unfolding the aura of the people in front of them. However, the other party's aura was vast. Although the Black Nether Army had tried their best, it was difficult for them to contend against it. In the face of absolute power, it was not useful to muster up courage. Some ordinary soldiers and civilians were also infected. Under such power, no one would be able to escape. Let's kill. The leader of the Black Nether Army roared. Old Commander Lai Feng also looked at the Black Nether Army in front of him, ready to die. He saw that those monsters were already less than 1,000 meters away. He looked at Qi Yanran beside him. He did not know when she had disappeared. As for Qi Yanran, the monsters were less than 300 meters away. The Black Nether Army also kept clenching the weapons in their hands. Get ready, the leader of the Black Nether Army roared. Less than 100 meters. They could already feel that the other party's aura was close at hand. Tens of thousands of them. Level 10 monsters. They all came to kill. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Just as they were about to collide. Suddenly, there was a divine light. It fell from the sky. When this light fell, everyone also felt that this light was like the sun, dazzling and crazy. Boom! The 5-colored divine light fell in the center of these two monsters. Then, like a lotus, it instantly bloomed in all directions. Boom! A powerful force swept out. This seemingly boiling power instantly pierced through the two monsters. When the power of light swept past their bodies, they were incinerated. Qi Yanran's move. 100,000 Supremes. And just after Qi Yanran used this move, from the evil forest, there seemed to be a force that suddenly attacked. Qi Yanran's move almost exhausted her origin energy. But she did not expect. The other party actually attacked again. The person behind the scenes. Although they were separated by dozens of miles, Qi Yanran still saw a figure appear there. It's you! The other party's power was almost about to capture Qi Yanran. But at this moment, a green light surged from Qi Yanran's body. It instantly exploded, turned into a sharp sword, and suddenly slashed forward. Chapter 1563. Such a heroic scene caused the Black Nether Army to look at it with complete respect. The battle situation in front of them was simply shocking. What's going on? It's so spectacular. Originally, the Black Nether Army was ready to fight to the death. However, the sudden appearance of this person saved them. If this figure had not appeared in time, they would have been reduced to a pile of ruins, a pile of ashes. It's Lord Qi, Qi Yanran, Lord Qi. The old commander quickly stood up and said. He was very clear about the situation in front of him. Only Qi Yanran had such strength. It was really shocking. Originally, Qi Yanran could have walked into the depths of the forest and found the mysterious tomb. However, she resolutely retreated in order to protect the people. Now, Qi Yanran seemed to have met an extremely difficult opponent. Under Qi Yanran's strong attack, the opponent seemed to be unharmed. He even directly mobilized the momentum of the entire evil forest to fight against Qi Yanran. Everyone in the small town also widened their eyes and stared at the unprecedented battle in front of them. The intensity of the battle was also beyond their imagination. Between heaven and earth, the layers of space itself also became blurry. He could even see the space in front of him forming waves after waves. It was a sign that spatial ripples were about to form. Once the space ripples were formed, the town would be turned into ashes in an instant. It would disappear completely. Wherever the space was, it would be directly crushed by the power of space. It was not something that could be resisted by human strength. The town was also very dangerous. Even with Qi Yanran's help, the opponent's power fluctuation was strange. It was difficult for Qi Yanran to succeed. Boom! A strong black power suddenly burst out from the evil forest. It sent Qi Yanran's green bird sword flying. The green bird sword suddenly turned into a lotus platform and directly appeared under Qi Yanran's feet. Although the opponent looked like Wan Yulan, but Qi Yanran also knew that it was impossible for Wan Yulan to have such powerful strength. Something must have happened, which was why such a situation had occurred. However, since the other party had taken control of Wan Yulan, it meant that Li Zongjio was also in danger now. Otherwise, Li Zongjio wouldn't leave him in the lurch. Although the other party's moves were strange, Qi Yanran could barely cope with it. However, Qi Yanran herself could not guarantee what kind of moves the other party was hiding. Looking at the city behind him, it was already on the verge of collapse. Qi Yanran also could not let these people die because of the aftermath of this battle. Boom! Qi Yanran suddenly leaped and turned into thousands of clones. His own will had descended. Suddenly, a giant peacock appeared. When the peacock appeared, its body was surrounded by a ray of light. This ray of light was radiant with 5 different colors. When the peacock appeared, immediately, a surge of energy was released. Such a commotion! It almost shattered the space in front of him. This power, which could almost shatter the space, rushed directly toward Wan Yulan in the evil forest. You can imitate the 5-colored divine light of the peacock ancestors so well. It's a pity that the power of this primordial spirit is slightly weaker. Otherwise, I would have been hurt by you. Su Yuran spoke. Although the voice was still a familiar one. However, from the tone of this voice, it sounded like a complete stranger. It could even be said that she did not know this person at all. Possession and rebirth? A trace of surprise flashed in Qi Yanran's eyes. When thinking of this, Qi Yanran's heart was also quite shocked. This was only heard of in legends. And it also came from her own inherited memory. That was the green bird platform in her hand. She did not expect that such a thing would actually happen in front of her. Was it possible to possess someone and be reborn? At least this will was at the level of innate level 9. In other words, the person in front of her was actually at innate level 9. This also made Qi Yanran extremely shocked. She did not expect to meet such a strong person. You're not bad to know about possession and rebirth. But it's a pity that your primordial spirit is a great supplement for me. Immediately, Wan Yulan's eyes suddenly became abnormally fierce. At the same time, Qi Yanran felt that there were actually 4 tombstones around her, which were rapidly colliding with her body. If she was trapped in it, it would be difficult for her to escape. Therefore, Qi Yanran herself quickly escaped from it. Earth incantation. Poison. What Wan Yulan used was an extremely profound way of setting up a formation. It directly exploded beside Qi Yanran. The moment it appeared, Qi Yanran also felt a strong dizziness. This dizziness was not a kind of poison to her body. It came from her own will. The opponent's move could actually affect the power of her will. Not good. She felt that the opponent's formation was getting stronger and stronger. And she could not get rid of this formation. She could not get rid of this power. If the stalemate continued, it would definitely cause irreparable damage to Qi Yanran's body. Even her own life would be completely left here. Whoosh! Just when Qi Yanran was unable to get away. Suddenly, a stick fell from the sky. When the stick spun and leaped over, it attracted Wan Yulan's attention. The stick also instantly enlarged and directly smashed toward Wan Yulan. Under this threat, Wan Yulan could not help but raise one hand in front of her to block the stick. Only then did she block the stick. Boom! This power actually forced Wan Yulan to retreat. What? Wan Yulan was also very surprised. Originally, she wanted to use this powerful force to directly take down the person who came, but considering the limit of her body, she could not continue. In the end, she held back. Go! A voice sounded in Qi Yanran's ears. It sounded a little familiar. But now was not the time to recognize the person. The situation was urgent, and there was no room for any delay. Immediately, Qi Yanran directly turned the bluebird platform into a pair of wings and appeared behind her. At the same time, she directly took her body and quickly escaped from this spell. Boom! Immediately, Qi Yanran also quickly disappeared into the sky. Wan Yulan did not chase after her. Instead, she glanced at the place where she had blocked the stick. The stick was actually in her hand. It left a mark. Great Void Spell? Chapter 1564. Wan Yulan watched Qi Yanran leave. Qi Yanran ran away and wanted to chase after her. After all, Qi Yanran's divine sense was a great supplement for her. Wan Yulan's body could not hold on for many days, and then she would return to her original form. Therefore, the best way was to improve her strength and restore more power. After that, she would seize Li Zongjiu's body. Then she would be able to achieve a complete resurrection. However, the other party escaped. She almost succeeded. The strength of the person who attacked was not weak. If she forced herself to leave the evil forest and fight against two people, she would be in a disadvantageous position. I'll let you live for a few more days. When my formation is completed, I will naturally be able to refine this boy. Wan Yulan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Killing these ordinary people. For the soul in Wan Yulan's body, there wasn't the slightest bit of benefit, nor was there the slightest bit of use. In the beginning, she only wanted to attract some experts and attract them over. Now, she finally met experts of this level and realm. Therefore, she only needed to take one or two suitable ones. Qi Yanran was also suitable. Li Zongjiu's body was naturally better. Li Zongjiu was trapped in his own will seal at the moment. He had not given up. If he wanted to get out, he had to break through his own will. However, the best way was to break through his own realm. Although the evil dragon's eye was effective, it was only used for daily training and did not have other effective effects. At the critical moment, it was obviously a little difficult to rely on it to break through. Therefore, Li Zongjiu took out the chaos spell. There are a total of 3 strands of chaotic power in this chaos spell. I only absorbed one strand at the beginning. Now is the time. The chaotic power that he absorbed at the beginning completely changed Li Zongjiu's physique. In other words, it directly activated Li Zongjiu's body. This allowed Li Zongjiu's body to possess even greater power. Now, it was time for him to absorb the remaining chaotic energy. At that time, he would refine it together with the chaos spell. It could be considered a perfect refinement of the chaos spell. In this way, the power of the chaos spell could be fully displayed without reservation. Although Li Zongjiu's realm and inheritance might be somewhat insufficient, it could be seen that the chaos spell in his hand and the bluebird platform were treasures of the same level. Treasures of such a level. Of course, Li Zongjiu had to go through a better refinement before he could grasp the power within. Li Zongjiu's mind. Enter the world chaos spells world. Currently, there were still many dragons in the primordial bell. These were all captured by Li Zongjiu last time. Li Zongjiu's figure hovered above the primordial bell. Boundless primal chaos energy came from all around. It crazily poured into Li Zongjiu's body. These were the remaining 2 chaotic power. They were all summoned by Li Zongjiu and absorbed directly. Endless Sea Region. Huo Wushuang was flying above the Endless Sea Region on the unparalleled sword. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he could cross hundreds of miles. However, the Black Sea Region did not appear. Either he was going in the wrong direction. Otherwise, ordinary people would not be able to find it in this Black Sea. Why can't I find it? In Huo Wushuang's eyes, all he could see was a boundless ocean. No matter how he looked, he couldn't find the right direction. Is it because I'm just a spiritual body? Some places were set up with restrictions. If you don't have someone to guide you, then it's absolutely impossible to enter, unless you're strong enough to break the restriction. Then you can try to rush in. But obviously, Huo Wushuang did not have that kind of strength. Huo Wushuang had no choice. To think that it was actually a head that plunged into the deep sea with the unparalleled sword. Boom! The unparalleled sword rushed in and looked for a way. Then Huo Wushuang integrated his power into the sea. He wanted to use this method to summon the Black Sea Overlord. Above the sea, one could see that the crimson flame was spreading continuously. The chances of that happening were extremely slim. In fact, it was even possible for him to exhaust all of his strength. But Ho Wushuang had no other way. He could only release his power and use this method to attract the Black Sea Overlord's attention. Ho Wushuang's power spread crazily above the Endless Sea region for 7 days. The area covered by the sea was more than 1,000,000 miles. But the power of the unparalleled sword was limited, especially now that he had left Li Zongjiu. At the same time, he was in such a place and in the deep sea. 7 days was the limit for the unparalleled sword. But during this process, there was no response at all. 7 or 8 days later, on the unparalleled sword, gradually, the power of frost began to condense. It was freezing the unparalleled sword. The bottom of the sea was an extremely cold place. Ho Wushuang stood on the surface of the sea and used his last bit of strength to look in the direction of Li Zongjiu. He didn't say anything. The last bit of power disappeared. Then, Ho Wushuang's figure gradually faded. In the end, he disappeared. The last ray of light on the unparalleled sword disappeared. The ice power covered it. It was forever sealed at the bottom of the sea that swallowed everything. There wasn't even the slightest bit of light. After the unparalleled sword was frozen, suddenly, there seemed to be a huge wave on the calm surface of the sea. The waves on the surface of the sea were already extremely turbulent, and under the surface of the sea, there were even more raging waves. It was as if there was a sea that appeared out of thin air. A figure appeared beside the unparalleled sword. The person's long hair was as black as ink. It fluttered behind him like a huge wave. The person glanced at the unparalleled sword. There wasn't the slightest bit of emotion in his eyes. After a long while, he sighed slowly. It's a sword that values emotions. However, there's nothing I can do to help. The Black Sea Lord sighed faintly. There were rules in the world. However, although the Black Sea Lord couldn't attack directly, it wasn't a big deal for him to help in the dark. The Black Sea Lord extended his hand and gently plucked the sea. This heart of the extremely cold Jade Sea is enough for you to become a half-immortal artifact. It's your own fortune. The Black Sea Lord flicked his finger and the black stone in his hand shot into the unparalleled sword. Immediately, the ice on the surface of the unparalleled sword gradually shattered. At the same time, the heart of the Jade Sea was gradually fusing with the unparalleled sword. In the end, it fused perfectly with the unparalleled sword. When the heart of the Jade Sea fused with the unparalleled sword, from the unparalleled sword, there seemed to be a burst of extremely strong energy. Buzz. A ripple spread out. Ho Wushuang. He actually woke up from the deep sea. When he felt the power on his body, Ho Wushuang's fiery red hair turned icy blue again. Chapter 1565. Ho Wushuang woke up in the deep sea. She didn't know how long she had been unconscious. However, he could also feel that his strength had become many times stronger. She knew that it must be that expert who had helped her. Her strength and cultivation base had been raised. That was to say, the quality of Wushuang's sword had improved. Although she didn't know why the other party didn't want to see her. However, the strong all had their own reasons. Maybe he was restricted by some anger or other reasons, so he couldn't help her. He could only help her in such a way. Thank you, Senior, for helping me. Ho Wushuang could feel that his Li Lang had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. He bowed towards the depths of the ocean from afar. She wanted to express her gratitude. Since the senior didn't want to see her, it was probably because the time wasn't right. When the time was right, they would meet. Ho Wushuang naturally knew what the Black Sea Lord and Li Zongjiu had said. Seems like I have to find Qi Yanran. Ho Wushuang thought to herself. Although her strength had made a breakthrough, she was still much weaker than Li Zongjiu, not to mention the mysterious enemy who had controlled Li Zongjiu. Since she couldn't invite the Black Sea Lord, she could only find Qi Yanran. She wanted to see if Qi Yanran had any ideas. Whoosh! Immediately, Ho Wushuang quickly flew out from the deep sea. She soared into the sky. Boom! The power of ice and fire, It's a perfect fusion. My grade has been completely improved. But Huo Wushuang's strength. Now they were all rising steadily. She was close to the 5th grade of the Absolute Saint Realm. One should know that the Termite Demon Queen was only a 7th grade of the Absolute Saint Realm, in addition to the power of the Heavenly Book in her hand. Moreover, Huo Wushuang herself was only a sword. She herself was just a sword spirit. It was quite terrifying to be able to cultivate to such a level. Her strength was much stronger than that. Huo Wushuang didn't waste any time. She quickly headed toward the Sacred Flame Royal City. Qi Yanran? Even Huo Wushuang herself didn't know where she was. He could only look for Xiao Zhao in the mansion and ask her to help him contact Li Yun. No matter what, Li Yun was still Huo Wushuang's disciple. This was not something that could be easily changed. Even Li Yun's current status was bestowed upon her by Huo Wushuang. If he wanted to find them to do something, it would naturally be very easy and very normal. Boom! The unparalleled sword cut through the sky. They headed towards the Sacred Flame Royal City. At this moment, Qi Yanran was not in the Sacred Flame Royal City. Instead, it appeared at the bottom of a waterfall. The person who helped Qi Yanran that day was Wang Jing. This was the fatty that Li Zongjio had met. To be honest, Qi Yanran was also very confused at first. Why would Li Zongjio and Wang Jing become friends? Even Wang Jing himself was confused and didn't understand the situation. However, their personalities were also quite good. Everyone was able to get along well. Therefore, they naturally became friends. Qi Yanran didn't know what Wang Jing was capable of. However, since she heard that Wang Jing had been to the Ape Clan continent, she understood. In fact, Wang Jing's strength was far above hers. Therefore, she couldn't sense Wang Jing's real situation. And Wang Jing himself was definitely not a simple person. It's safe here. That guy will definitely not find this place. Wang Jing looked around. After making sure that it was safe, he finally sat down on the ground. He was also thinking about what had happened before. He felt quite shocked, because such a terrifying guy was not common. If it wasn't for the powerful weapon in his hand, he might not have been able to escape. Where is this? Qi Yanran glanced at the waterfall. The roar of the waterfall was deafening. At the same time, after Qi Yanran's observation, she also found that the situation here had changed. You can see that this is a place where space overlaps. I was also very surprised to find this place. The other continent that overlaps with the Saint Martial continent is the Ape Clan continent. Wang Jing said, in theory, this place was already at the border of the 2 continents. Although this is the border, in fact, there seems to be a locked door on both sides. Only by opening it with a key can you go back and forth between the 2 continents. Wang Jing said. Qi Yanran didn't expect such a place to exist. It was really surprising. Qi Yanran was seriously injured. After coughing a few times, she didn't hesitate anymore. Under the protection of the lotus flower transformed by the green bird platform, her injuries were being healed. The green bird platform was instinctively protecting its owner. It could be seen that this was a very powerful divine weapon. This thing is already close to a fairy weapon. It belongs to the top among the supreme spiritual weapons. I wonder what material it is made of. Wang Jing? He circled the object twice and studied it, but he couldn't find anything different about it. Refining weapons was broad and profound. That guy from the Ape Clan has really broken the sky. Wang Jing was also having a headache about this. Something big had happened in the Ape Clan continent. It was the War of the Ape Clan. The legendary celestial chaotic world demonic monkey had created a huge hole in the heavenly realm during the Great Battle. This was equivalent to breaking a hole in the ceiling of your house. Although the power of the Way of the Heavens had quickly repaired this big hole. However, no one knew exactly how many people were involved in that process. Many experts from the heavenly realm had fled to other realms. Of course, Wang Jing himself didn't know much about the existence of this boundary. He only knew some basic knowledge. In terms of cultivation, he was far from being as powerful as Li Zongjio. Just now, he had sneak attacked Wan Yulan because of his special weapon, which was protected by the Great Void spell. Therefore, he was able to temporarily deter the other party. If they really wanted to fight, Wang Jing was no match for the latter. Therefore, even when Qi Yanran was here, he could only take her away directly. He didn't dare to continue to be entangled with the other party. Otherwise, if he continued to dig, Wang Jing's life would also be lost. What about other places? I'm not sure. Anyway, one came from the Holy Martial Continent. I guess there's more than one. This is just a little bit ostentatious. Without a doubt. The expert who came from the sky with the tombstone was from the heavenly realm. The reason why he could come to this place was that the great heaven chaotic demonic monkey had broken the heavenly realm. Chapter 1566. The Heavenly Realm. It was a higher level of space than the Nine Realms continent. Those who could go to this world were from the Nine Realms, which was the continent represented by the Nine Lineages arcane book. The place where the top experts could go together. Those who came to this place were extremely strong. But what about the Heavenly Realm? Wang Jing didn't know what the situation was. Wang Jing had returned to the Ape Clan continent. He found that the Ape Clan was indeed in the middle of a war. Some time ago, they had just fought a battle. But now, Wang Jing himself had also safely retreated from it. Wang Jing was going to come back to ask for help. After all, the other party was too strong. He couldn't beat them. When he came back, he found that Li Zongjio had disappeared. He knew that Qi Yanran was on her way. So, Wang Jing came to the Evil Forest. In the Evil Forest, he happened to encounter Qi Yanran's dangerous situation. That was why he decided to lend a helping hand. It was rare for him to reveal his strength. However, at this point, there was nothing to be concerned about. Now, such a situation had happened. All the continents were in a precarious situation. He would definitely make a move in a situation where he had no other choice. Qi Yanran was healing in the Green Bird platform. Wang Jing didn't dare to leave. However, this Azure Bird Dao platform was clearly something very powerful. Even if there were really enemies coming, it was estimated that they would be able to resist them and protect Qi Yanran. Look at it, it's so smart. Wang Jing said to the stick in his hand. This stick was called the Universal Wishful Stick. Wang Jing himself didn't know who made it, but when he accidentally came to the Ape Continent, this rod seemed to have been following him all the time. And the key to connecting the two worlds was the Universal Wishful Stick in his hand. The Universal Wishful Stick in his hand was very powerful. It could easily travel between the two continents. But this was a secret that Wang Jing had kept very well. He didn't tell anyone. While Wang Jing was waiting for Qi Yanran to recover, the unparalleled sword was also looking for the two people. Huo Wushuang arrived at the White Deer Mansion and mobilized all the resources in the White Deer Mansion. In this way, they could quickly gather information about Li Zongjio. However, no matter how resourceful the White Deer Mansion was, it was still an intelligence organization formed by ordinary people. If one wanted to find innate experts like Wang Jing and Qi Yanran, who could appear tens of thousands of miles away in an instant, it was impossible to catch up with them. They could only search the official website from afar. It was impossible to track them down. There's no news. They all disappeared into thin air. When Xiao Zhao presented the information he had gathered to Huo Wushuang, he couldn't believe it either. However, this was not the first time they had seen such a situation. But these experts all disappeared at the same time, so there must be a problem. Therefore, Xiao Zhao was very clear in his heart. The whereabouts of these experts were almost erratic. It was just that this was too much of a coincidence. Nothing. Huo Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly. However, if we can't find them in the range of the three dynasties, then we definitely can't find them in ordinary places. Maybe we can try these places, Xiao Zhao said. Since there were no traces of these people in the places covered by the spies, then in these places they had not set foot in. They might be able to find them. On the Shengwu continent, there were many strange places that humans had not set foot in. Although the continent was only so big, there were always some hidden corners. It's just like the house you live in. Although you come and go every day and the area is only so big, there will always be some corners that you can't observe normally. These corners, Xiao Zhao called them forgotten places. Now, there were at least 7 forgotten places on this continent. They were all places that humans had never set foot in. There were very few records about these places, and some even didn't exist. They were different from the forbidden places in the untainted land. The reason why the forbidden places were called forbidden places was that people had gone there and set foot in them, or had seen the dangers with their own eyes. Therefore, they were called forbidden places. This was to warn the future generations not to set foot in such places easily. These places were very dangerous. The forgotten places were really places that no one had gone and no one had discovered. Xiao Zhao marked the specific locations of the forgotten places. However, these 7 places were very far away from each other and were difficult to find. Just as Xiao Zhao was about to say something, Huo Wushuang had already put away the map in front of him. Then he quickly flew toward the sky. Boom! Obviously, Huo Wushuang didn't want to waste any more time. Since there were only 7 places, then he would start searching from these 7 places one by one. Men! Xiao Zhao shouted. Now, more and more extraordinary things were happening on this continent. It seemed that there were strong enemies gradually appearing in the dark. Director, let the Research Institute start the Ultimate Weapon Project. Xiao Zhao said. The Ultimate Weapon Project. At any time, if you wanted to become richer and stronger, you had to be strong first. You had to be strong. In fact, Xiao Zhao had drawn up this Ultimate Weapon Project a long time ago. However, he didn't implement it, because this project was too advanced. At the same time, it would consume a lot of money. At that time, there was a strong guardian like Li Zongjio, so the White Deer Mansion naturally didn't have to go to this step. However, it suddenly appeared now. These top experts had all gone missing. It was obvious that even they were in danger. Therefore, Xiao Zhao had to bring forward the plan. No matter when, it was never wrong to make some preparations in advance. Only in this way could he ensure his own safety and property. In Xiao Zhao's opinion, it wasn't too late. Now, the White Deer Mansion had enough financial resources to recruit the truly talented and intelligent people in the world and directly integrate them into the Research Institute, using this method to ensure that the best weapons came from the White Deer Mansion. If it wasn't because of the 7-star fire room, if it was Song Jiyu behind it, then Xiao Zhao would have already bought the 7-star fire room. He directly bought it. However, just now, all the forging masters of the major weapon workshops had been summoned by the White Deer Mansion. Chapter 1567. The launch of the Ultimate Weapon Project. It would also greatly promote the weapon industry of the entire continent. It was no longer traditional, cold weapons. Instead, it was a variety of origin energy weapons. Although they already had origin energy weapons before the launch of the project, they were only using the power of primordial stones in a very superficial way at that time. Xiao Zhao directly instructed that a storm would be stirred up in the area she was in charge of. This research institute, which was known as the Ultimate Weapon Project. Almost all kinds of geniuses had gathered here. Before they were discovered by Xiao Zhao, even their companions and relatives thought that they were crazy, possessed, or stupid saboteurs. In the eyes of others, such people were simply a threat. However, Xiao Zhao gathered all these people here. He directly carried out the best kind of training and specially prepared a place for them to experiment. He also provided them with a large amount of funds. This allowed them to repeatedly create and research. Now, they were finally going to integrate these resources that had been opened long ago into a real sharp knife. It possessed such absolute majesty and power. Even Nangong Wuji and the others could not enter this research institute. This was because the ideas they received were too traditional and it was difficult for them to truly jump out of it. Xiao Zhao did not know whether this plan would succeed or not. However, the current situation did not allow Xiao Zhao to continue waiting. In the evil forest, Li Zongjio was still trapped in the wall formed by his own will. At this moment, Li Zongjio had also left the Chaos Bell. However, the chaotic power was already in Li Zongjio's body. For Li Zongjio, refining these two kinds of chaotic power at the same time was a very risky act because it was very likely that the chaotic power would exceed the limit that his body could bear. At that time, it would directly cause a loud boom. It would be blown to pieces by the chaotic power. Fortunately, this situation did not happen. Instead, it quickly stabilized the destructive power of the chaotic power in his body. Li Zongjiu's physique was very strong. Previously, he had experience dealing with the chaotic energy. Hence, he was able to absorb it like a fish in water this time. It was easy and simple. Boom. At this moment, Li Zongjiu's body was like an exploding supreme-grade primordial stone, and it was still exploding continuously. However, Li Zongjiu had to withstand this power. Otherwise, if he did not control the power, his entire body would have been shattered by the chaotic force. The process was extremely painful. Within the evil dragon eye, Li Zongjiu's mental strength was being continuously shredded. But now, Li Zongjiu was also enduring the feeling of his body and mind being torn apart at the same time. Furthermore, they couldn't be revived here. If Li Zongjiu died, then the wall of willpower around him would naturally disappear. Li Zongjiu had not reached the state where his willpower could remain after he died. Hence, he needed more power to concentrate on his body to break through. Hold on! Li Zongjiu roared. Even the heretical god's eye was forced out. This was a natural skill of Li Zongjiu. However, it was difficult for him to calm down at this moment. Hence, he could only release it continuously. This allowed Li Zongjiu to continue maintaining his powerful combat strength under such circumstances. Hence, he was able to persevere. Wan Yulan, who was still cultivating in the mysterious tomb. She seemed to have sensed the change in Li Zongjiu's direction. However, that was it. After taking a look, he sneered disdainfully. I'll let you do whatever you want. You're just an ant. Do you think you can overturn the sky in my hands? The latter was extremely disdainful. However, she was also in a hurry. At least, she had to ensure that before Wan Yulan's body completely collapsed. She had to restore some of her strength. All parties seemed to be working hard. They all had their own things to do. It seemed that an earth-shattering battle was brewing. Huo Wushuang had already explored 5 places in a row. However, they were all empty. Although it took a lot of time, in Huo Wushuang's opinion, there didn't seem to be too many problems. Hence, during this process, Huo Wushuang's strength was rapidly increasing. Huo Wushuang didn't know what the mysterious expert had given her. It was actually able to allow his strength to increase so quickly. It was as if she had broken her own limit. There was no trace of Qi Yanran in any of the forgotten places. Huo Wushuang's figure stood in the air. Through the mutual sensing with Li Zongjiu from afar, Huo Wushuang could also feel that Li Zongjiu seemed to be getting stronger. This meant that Li Zongjiu's body was fine, and he could even obtain a greater opportunity to improve his own strength. Huo Wushuang and Li Zongjiu had already signed a contract. Li Zongjiu had directly refined the Wushuang sword. Therefore, he could maintain the energy of the Wushuang sword and improve its cultivation. Therefore, Huo Wushuang could accurately sense the situation of Li Zongjiu. Since I can't find him, I'll try again. Although Huo Wushuang had already transformed into a spiritual sword. However, their intellect was still there. This time, she had to hide her aura and strength. Since Li Zongjiu was fine and his strength was gradually increasing, this was a good thing for Huo Wushuang. At the very least, she had to sense an opportunity, which was when Li Zongjiu needed a powerful weapon. Then, she could appear by Li Zongjiu's side in time. Boom! Huo Wushuang flew towards the forest of evil. The existence of the Abyss race was still waiting for an opportunity to attack the threat of invading the continent. However, the current strength of the continent had become quite strong. There were also many experts who appeared one after another. An expert of the younger generation like Xia Shui was already very strong. At the very least, she could hold her own in various major battles. She could use this method to kill the enemy. Therefore, when Xia Shui finished her apprenticeship, she led the disciples of the Sky Sect Academy to establish a battlefield to resist the Abyss race. On such a battlefield, Xia Shui fully displayed her strength and beheaded her opponent. Coastline. On a beach not far from Binhai City. This was because this place was vast and all the sand could be used by the Abyss race. Therefore, the Abyss race had also come to this place. They used this place to conduct a large-scale landing. It seemed that during this period of time, the Abyss race had sensed the chaos of the continent, so they wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to do something. Therefore, they launched an attack. Xia Shui led many experts and engaged in a fierce battle with the Abyss race on this coastline. This day was the day when the Abyss race launched their attack. On the vast sea, there were ferocious Abyss race monsters baring their teeth in front of them. While the two sides were fighting, Xia Shui suddenly raised her head. She saw a fireball appear in the sky. This fireball looked very small. However, it was extremely fast. With a boom, it fell directly into the sea. Suddenly, a huge wave with a radius of 10,000 miles surged. All the Abyss race in front of her were burned to ashes. Chapter 1568. The fireball that suddenly fell from the sky shocked everyone who was fighting on the coastline. Even the powerful Abyssal clan in front of them were burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. Who else in the world could have such powerful strength? There was only the evil dominator. Evil Lord? Xia Shui's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. If there was someone who could help them kill the Abyssal race at this time, and at the same time had such great strength, then it had to be the evil dominator. But in the next moment, another terrifying wave of air came from the surface of the sea. The wave of fire swept over. It was as if hundreds of fire meta beasts were rushing over. Some of the human clan experts on the shore were also caught. After being caught, they were completely melted by the flames. All those who were caught were directly refined into a pile of ashes, and all the power poured into the latter's body. It was sent to a fireball on the sea. Immediately, Xia Shui saw her companions being killed by the power of the fireball. She hurriedly yelled, "Retreat! A powerful enemy has appeared. Retreat quickly!" It was as if there were countless arms extending out of the fireball. They grabbed at the people on the shore. Some of the disciples of the Sky Sect Academy were also taken away. The opponent was quite powerful. Xia Shui used her sword energy to cut off the flaming arms. But she found that even her sword energy could not do it. The opponent's flaming arms kept spinning above the sea. The strong flaming arms evaporated the surrounding sea water in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the opponent burned thousands of people on the shore and turned them into the latter's power. Then, the power rushed toward her. The blazing power made Xia Shui and the others feel despair. This kind of power was almost suffocating. It was difficult to fight against it. They could only watch from afar, staring at the power of the opponent and waiting for death to come. Boom! Even the sky seemed to have been burned into a piece of red iron. At this moment, the beach along the coastline had been directly refined into a desert. Xia Shui led several junior brothers and sisters to evacuate with difficulty. Finally, the opponent's flaming hand rushed towards Xia Shui. Xia Shui quickly pushed her companions away. He was left alone to face the flaming hand that had suddenly appeared. Boom! Instantly, the opponent's flaming hand was blocked. It fell on Xia Shui's body. Immediately, a violent force surged in Xia Shui's body. At this moment, Xia Shui felt as if she had been sucked into a huge fireball. Senior Xia Shui! Senior Xia Shui! Just as Xia Shui was about to burn the other party clean and end up like the rest of the people, suddenly, a ray of light gushed out from Xia Shui's body. This power was extremely strong. In an instant, the flames were extinguished. Xia Shui also escaped safely. With a bang, he fell onto the beach. Xia Shui had also sensed this power just now, and it was particularly familiar. She immediately understood in her heart that this was the power of Senior Evil Lord. Before Li Zhongjio left, he had already placed a protective talisman on Xia Shui's body long ago in order to save her life at this critical moment. Obviously, the effect this time was very significant. He directly broke out the power of the innate realm and forced the opponent to retreat. The person hiding in the fireball in front of her was obviously very surprised. However, what made the latter more surprised was that a force was rapidly approaching, so he became vigilant. I didn't expect that there would be such an expert in this small underworld. On the coast, Xia Shui landed and instinctively breathed a sigh of relief. After all, The power just now was suffocating, and she had no power to resist at all. She was not at the same level as the opponent at all. If it wasn't for the protective power that Evil Lord had left on her body, she would have died. Xia Shui probably would have died just now. This made Xia Shui tremble with fear. At least now, she could be considered to have escaped with her life. Senior Xia Shui, are you okay? The junior brothers and sisters rushed over. Protect Senior Xia and retreat. Look, what's that? Everyone raised their heads and looked in front of them. Even some of the people who were running for their lives were staring with their eyes wide open. At this moment, above the sea, because of the fireball, a lot of the sea water had been burned dry. This kind of burning speed was not that simple. It was a speed that was visible to the naked eye. It was precisely because the power was too strong that the expert hidden in the dark appeared. The originally blue sea water directly turned black at this moment. When the black sea water turned black, it was as if a pitch-black force was rapidly attacking. It rushed above the fireball. Was it not afraid of the power of the latter's flames? It completely covered the fireball. Everyone had seen the power of the fireball just now. When it fell, it had already set off a huge wave, killing all the abyssal monsters. This kind of strength was not ordinary. Black Sea water? Not many people knew about the legend of the Black Sea. Even if they knew, they only thought that it was just a legend. However, they did not expect that such Black Sea water would really appear. Moreover, this Black Sea water seemed to be full of vitality. It quickly attacked and completely extinguished the other party's flames. The two sides seemed to be fighting. The person in the fireball wanted to escape. However, he was firmly restrained by the power of the Black Sea. It was difficult to escape. There was nowhere to hide. Even if he tried his best to escape, there was still nothing he could do. He was firmly restrained. He could not escape. The other party's flames, even if they were so far away, they could still feel the terrifying power. Even the surrounding seawater, except for the Black Sea water, all the other seawater had evaporated. It formed a strange situation of Black Sea water pillars. The seawater in the distance was also rushing over quickly. It directly poured into these evaporated places. Boom! From the Black Sea, a powerful force suddenly erupted and directly dragged the fireball into the seawater. It set off a huge wave. Under the Black Sea, the Black Sea Overlord met the person in the fireball. To be able to enter the celestial realm, you are considered not bad in the lower realm. Unfortunately, your cultivation is far from enough to kill me. A red-haired middle-aged man walked out of the fireball. Even in the Black Sea, there was a layer of flames around him to protect him. It resisted the invasion of the power of the Black Sea. Chapter 1569. Black Sea Overlord didn't waste his breath. Speaking of which, he was quite unlucky. He had just given away the heart of the Blue Sea to someone else 2 days ago. Otherwise, with the heart of the Blue Sea in his hand, it wouldn't be the turn of this person. The visitor from outer space was arrogant. There was no place for him to be arrogant. However, he had to subdue the latter now. A handprint condensed. Sea overturning spell. A wave of power was released from Black Sea Overlord's handprint. It was as if countless flying fishes were attacking with the water of the Black Sea. In the blink of an eye, they rushed to the flaming man in front of him. Boom, boom, boom. The power of the curse technique kept bombarding the flaming man's body. It was as if the latter's body was going to be penetrated. The continuous attacks had greatly damaged the flaming man's vitality. However, under the attack of Black Sea Overlord's spell, he couldn't be idle. Fire Dragon spell. However, the flaming man was obviously not to be trifled with. Similarly, the power of the spell was released. The majesty of this fire dragon was completely different from the one on Dragon Island. It was the majesty of a true divine dragon. However, it was precisely because of his serious injuries that the power of the fire dragon spell was greatly weakened. Boom! The power of the fire dragon devoured the surrounding seawater. At this moment, the scene of the battle on the shore had caused the seawater to turn upside down crazily. Rumble! Immediately, one could see that the entire sea surface and the sky had turned pitch black. However, in this sea, there were some terrifying red flames that were constantly being released. It was as if a volcano was erupting in the seawater. It was carrying out a destructive attack at the bottom of the sea. What's going on? The surrounding people were also quite shocked. The scene of the battle in the seawater had already affected the shore. At the same time, many cracks appeared on the shore. This was because of the impact of the other party's power. This caused many deep ravines and cracks to appear on the land. It kept erupting, and seawater kept pouring in. Suddenly, the cracks that appeared from the impact had already spread to Binhai City. Not good. Evacuate the people in the city. The Binhai Navy's fleet was directly penetrated by the powerful impact. Countless soldiers fell into the water. If it weren't for the seawater's slight resistance, Binhai City might have long been destroyed by the other party's terrifying battle. The evacuation operation couldn't be delayed. In fact, during this period of time, unless it was necessary, ordinary personnel had already been transferred to a branch city 60 kilometers away from Binhai City. For the time being, this place was used as a temporary residence. He himself had been in a state of intense battle recently. A figure flew over from the sky. What happened? Long Ji flew over from afar. Long Ji was already a top expert representing the White Deer Mansion. She had been participating in the fight against the Abyssal race. Now that the war had broken out, the Abyssal King that she had just fought had turned around and fled. This made Long Ji feel very surprised. When he looked again, he sensed a huge commotion in the direction of Binhai City. There are two experts fighting at the bottom of the sea. We don't know the other party's identity. Xia Shui said. It was naturally difficult to determine the other party's identity. Xia Shui had never seen this Black Sea overlord before. Furthermore, there was also the person with the fireball that descended from the sky. Even if Li Zongjio was here, he would not be able to differentiate them. Long Ji looked into the depths of the sea. From time to time, surging light would erupt. Even Long Ji was shaken to the core. Furthermore, Long Ji didn't dare to rashly enter the water. At this moment, the power that erupted from the bottom of the sea was too terrifying. Long Ji couldn't withstand it. Therefore, she could only watch from the shore. When did so many experts appear? Even if the experts of Dragon Island were to join forces, they wouldn't be able to resist experts of such a realm. Long Ji's heart was also quite shocked. No wonder her ancestor had once said, he wanted the people of the Dragon Island to remain on the Dragon Island and not to leave the Dragon Island easily. If the evil dragon god had really angered the human experts back then, by now, most of the people on Dragon Island would have been killed by them. Even when Li Zongjio rushed to Dragon Island back then, he had started a massacre. No one in the dragon race could resist him. If Li Zongjio was willing, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill all the dragon race. It was just that he didn't want to do it. Now, the two people fighting at the bottom of the sea had terrifying auras. A casual attack from the other party could destroy Dragon Island. With this power, everyone couldn't wait to avoid it. Should we evacuate everyone first? Long Ji took a look and came back to her senses. Unknowingly, after staying in the human world for so long, Long Ji seemed to have fallen in love with it even more. Therefore, during this operation she wanted to protect the human race first. She got used to it. While the people of Binhai City were evacuating, they could already see Binhai City being struck by a huge force. Immediately, a city wall along the coast of Binhai City was destroyed into two. When Zhang Hengliang saw this scene, he felt extremely aggrieved. My city! Zhang Hengliang cried. However, in the current situation, although the city was destroyed, fortunately, the people in the city weren't in trouble. It was more or less a consolation. At the very least, Zhang Hengliang could guarantee the safety of his people. Long Ji and Xia Shui stood in the air. The battle at the bottom of the sea became more and more intense. However, the power of the flames was getting weaker and weaker. The power of the Black Sea became more and more intense. Boom! Finally, in the deep sea, the flaming man wanted to escape. He rushed out of the sea. However, Black Sea Overlord had never thought of letting him go. Once such an expert left, he would definitely cause considerable damage. Furthermore, once the latter's cultivation level recovered, even Black Sea Overlord might not be able to subdue him. He attacked continuously. He even used the power of the Black Sea to reach out of the sea and grab the other party. However, this person was also very cunning. He actually used an avatar as bait. As for his main body, he fled in another direction. With a boom, he disappeared into the horizon. Although he had lost an avatar, he had at least preserved his life. Just you wait. When I recover and return, I'll definitely burn your Black Sea. The other party said ruthlessly and disappeared into the sky. Black Sea Overlord stood at the bottom of the sea and stared at the other party's departing figure. The other party had already left the range of the sea. Even she was helpless. In the end, she could only leave dejectedly. After the battle, one could see that the sea and land were in a mess. The battle between the two mysterious experts, it came and left quickly. Furthermore, no one would come out to explain anything to them. Chapter 1570. The Battle of Binhai City. It also displayed an extremely terrifying destructive power. Of course, this was also because most of the power had been absorbed by the Black Sea. The expert in the Black Sea was also trying to avoid these injuries and prevent the destructive power from spreading. If it weren't for this expert in the Black Sea, the entire Binhai City, or even the land within 50 kilometers of Binhai City, would have been completely destroyed. These mysterious experts had made a move. Long Ji was also caught off guard. At the very least, she found this situation very unbelievable. Xia Shui could be considered to have experienced a life-and-death battle. She had almost died. Fortunately, that expert had made a move. Is the world going to fall into chaos? Xia Shui had also heard a lot of things recently. These kinds of things were obviously not good signs. Recently, there seemed to be some very terrifying movements in various parts of the dynasty. There were many natural and man-made disasters. However, the Shengyan dynasty had gradually become stronger recently. The country was strong. Furthermore, the current Emperor Shengyan was very open-minded. At least he knew. If he wanted to govern the dynasty well, he had to ensure that the White Deer Mansion was in his favor. He had to curry favor with the White Deer Mansion. Only when the White Deer Mansion made a move could the world be peaceful. Since he had such a good helper like the White Deer Mansion, what was there to dislike? He naturally had to make good use of it. If he could accept this point, it would naturally be considered a success. This was because the White Deer Mansion disdained to compete with him for these things. His strength had long transcended the world. When his opponent's strength had reached a level that was beyond his reach, he would no longer be a match for him. They would no longer be a threat to you. The White Deer Mansion was now much more low-key. It seemed that it was rare to see the White Deer Mansion everywhere. They must be doing something behind the scenes. The people outside naturally couldn't guess. However, the recent movements had indeed become much lesser. Huo Wushuang once again arrived outside the Forest of Evil. She transformed into a blue-haired woman. They were waiting in the city. Huo Wushuang herself was extremely intelligent, even though the situation was very urgent. He also wanted to save Li Zhongjio as soon as possible. However, acting rashly would only spoil things. Therefore, Huo Wushuang was very calm. They were waiting outside the town. Recently, she could feel that Li Zhongjio's strength seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. If that was the case, then perhaps Li Zhongjio was also in the process of breaking through. At the nameless waterfall, Qi Yanran woke up in the Bluebird Taoist platform. The injuries on his body had also healed. But at this moment, Qi Yanran did not find Wang Jing's figure. Wang Jing was nowhere to be found. After looking around, Qi Yanran didn't find Wang Jing. She didn't hesitate and just left the words, "Evil Forest." He also headed straight for the Forest of Evil. However, when Qi Yanran passed by a forest, she was shocked. This was the Blackwater Forest. It happened to be the border between the Shengyan dynasty and the Haiku dynasty. The forest terrain was also extremely vast. This was the Blackwater Forest. At this moment, it was burning with a raging fire. The Blackwater Forest covered more than tens of thousands of miles. However, as the fire burned, it easily covered 1/10 of the area. It was at least 3,000 miles in radius, and one could feel the heat wave from afar. What's going on? It was impossible for such a huge fire to appear in the elemental beast forest. Once such a situation occurred, powerful elemental beasts would usually take action. No matter how weak they were, the elemental energy of heaven and earth could easily extinguish any fire. It was rare for such a powerful fire to appear. Qi Yanran also tried to cover the forest fire with her own strength. However, even with Qi Yanran's strength, she couldn't completely extinguish the fire. Boom! The fire within hundreds of miles was extinguished instantly. However, in the blink of an eye, the flames burned fiercely once again. This is the power of the fire. The person who released this fire has an unfathomable cultivation. The fire itself belonged to a rather powerful force. Therefore, unless Qi Yanran absorbed the fire into her body one by one and refined it, the fire would never be extinguished. Moreover, the fire would spread. Even rivers, lakes, and seas could be easily burned to a crisp. Once the Blackwater Forest was burned to a crisp, the surrounding cities would naturally be burned to a crisp. Luoxia City was already a city in the sky given by Chenhua. Moreover, they could evacuate at any time. However, if they couldn't stop the fire from spreading, it would be useless no matter where they escaped to. Moreover, Li Tianqing and the others in Luoxia City would definitely not sit idly by. Even when the fire first appeared, they already found something wrong. After a series of experiments and work, they found that the fire couldn't be extinguished at all. Many elemental beasts were even burned to death in the forest. They couldn't escape in time. The fire could spread so quickly because the other party's power of the fire was too fierce. Moreover, once the fire touched the body, it couldn't be extinguished. When the elemental beasts ran out, they naturally brought the fire to other places. After being touched by the fire, the only outcome was death. After these elemental beasts were burned by the fire, they couldn't escape very far. Soon, they were burned to a crisp by the fire. By now, the fire was already so strong. It was so intense that it had reached a level where it was spreading unbridled. Under such circumstances, Li Tianqing led Zhou Bachuan and the others around the perimeter of the Blackwater Forest. With their strength, they continuously cleared out the areas of the Blackwater Forest that had not yet been engulfed by the fire to create an isolated zone. At least, they could slow down the spread of the fire. It wouldn't spread so quickly. However, this was only a delaying tactic. What was really useful was to extinguish the fire. Even now, they were more than 700 miles away. Luoxia City, which was high up in the sky, could clearly feel the heat waves covering the sky. Such a situation occurred. It made Luoxia City look like a huge steamer. Fortunately, the elemental energy thrusters in charge of patrolling the surroundings could replace the elemental energy with a kind of primordial stone that could release cold air. Only then did the temperature of the entire Luoxia City drop. During the design of this sky castle, they had already considered all possible problems in all aspects. Qi Yanran wanted to continue to take a look at the forest of evil. However, the fire was spreading here. It would definitely threaten Luoxia City. How could Qi Yanran watch Luoxia City get into trouble without doing anything? She immediately rushed towards Luoxia City. Chapter 1571. Luoxia City. Li Tianqing and the others also gathered together to discuss countermeasures. Now in Luoxia City, a group of ambitious people had gathered. Li Zongjio might not remember one of them. But in the later process, he had a lot of cooperation with Luoxia City. Even now, he had become the #1 herbal medicine business in Tianzong Academy. The daughter of Thousand Taste Cottage. Although Li Zongjio did not remember, Lu Yao had never forgotten Li Zongjio. This guy was also quite ruthless. It was as if she had never appeared in his life. But this did not matter to Lu Yao. Lu Yao's character did not allow her to do things that were too impulsive. So Lu Yao preferred to be like this. She would silently contribute and wait. Thousand Taste Cottage was also a great success now. In the beginning, they got Li Zongjiu's permission to enter Luoxia City and seize the opportunity. After getting familiar with them a little, they had also quickly established a relationship with him. After all, the strength of Thousand Taste Cottage was not bad. Over the years, they had been well-behaved and doing business well. However, the appearance of this fire also attracted Lu Yao's attention. If this fire is not extinguished as soon as possible, at least 5 extinct volcanoes in the Blackwater Forest may be ignited and revived at any time. Once they are revived, the destructive power will be immeasurable, Lu Yao said. After a few years, Lu Yao was also slender and elegant. She was no longer the shy girl before and had become more generous. She was a lady from a noble family, although now she had not officially taken over Thousand Taste Cottage. But in fact, she was already the real helmsman of Thousand Taste Cottage. Now, under the management of the latter, Thousand Taste Cottage was even more stable and improved. It was undeniable that this was Lu Yao's ability. Lu Yao was also a medicine gatherer. Compared to practicing martial arts like swords, spears, and sticks, Lu Yao preferred to use her own hands to find and dig precious medicinal herbs, explore some more mysterious terrains, and find some new medicinal herbs. She wanted to try other effects of the medicinal herbs. This kind of thing was what Lu Yao liked to do. The Blackwater Forest was rich in resources. There were many places where spiritual grasses and spiritual medicines were hidden. Some heavenly treasures were also hidden in very inconspicuous places. As long as one understood their habits, it would be easier to find them. Furthermore, Lu Yao was very familiar with the various terrains of the Blackwater Forest. A herb gatherer was more like a pathfinder. Therefore, the Thousand-Flavor Herb Hall didn't just have a simple topographic map. Often, there would be markings on the map. Any special topography, energy distribution, and specific situations in the vicinity would also be marked in great detail. That's right. Although these volcanoes have been dormant for a long time, as long as they are supplied with some energy, the magma book hidden in the depths will awaken and the originally calm energy will become even more violent. The power of the 5 volcanoes will stack together and not a single blade of grass will grow within 1,000 miles. If we want to restore this kind of terrain, it will be even more distant. A group of people were also discussing using the Tianwu boat to transport water here? Impossible. These flames, even with my origin energy cultivation, can't be extinguished. Li Tianqing shook his head repeatedly. When the flames burned less than 100 miles, they had already discovered the signs, although it was already very big at that time. But if it was just an ordinary fire, with Li Tianqing's sovereign cultivation, it wouldn't be difficult for him to extinguish the flames. But the difficulty was that the flames were not easy to extinguish. Even if he wanted to refine the flames, he couldn't keep up with the speed of the flames spreading. If we want to extinguish such flames, perhaps the frost dragon on the Dragon Island can help. Lu Yao of the Thousand-Flavor Herb Hall said. Since the Dragon Island appeared in the public sight, it was inevitable that many people would study the Dragon Island. As for the Frost Dragon clan, they were also very powerful. But the Frost Dragon was a solitary creature. It was a solitary character. Even if the Dragon clan was facing a disaster, it didn't participate. Every day, it would hide in the coldest place on the Dragon Island to sleep and cultivate. It had always been indifferent to the outside world. Frost Dragon? Then we have to go to the Dragon Island. Speaking of going to the Dragon Island, Li Zongjiu must be the one to make the trip. After all, Li Zongjiu was the only one who had been to the Dragon Island. Although he had some contact with the Dragon clan due to his relationship with Long Ji, it might not be possible to ask the Frost Dragon for help even if Long Ji personally made the trip. Something like this was still possible. Li Zongjiu had to make the trip. However, Li Tianqing hadn't heard any news from Li Zongjiu recently. Either the latter was in seclusion. Anyway, with Li Zongjiu's strength, it was impossible for anything to happen to him. Li Tianqing was confident about this too. I don't know where that brat went. But since such a big matter didn't disturb him, it means that he's busy with something more important. If we're talking about going to the Dragon Island to ask the Frost Dragon for help, I'm afraid other than the 3 of you, we're not strong enough. Li Tianqing said. This was indeed the truth. The three elders of the Sparrow Divine Palace were all supremacies. Apart from the Khanate experts, no one in the world could withstand the might of a supremacy. This point was still very obvious. The strength and advantage of strength were right there and couldn't be ignored. But speaking of going to the Dragon Island, in fact, the three elders were extremely unwilling to do so. The three great demon clans had turned against each other and became enemies. Although they didn't turn against each other, they were at least competitors. And they used to be the three great demon clans. Wouldn't it be a little demeaning to ask another person for help now? They couldn't let this matter go. Although the relationship between the Sparrow clan and the Dragon clan isn't harmonious, we're doing this for the sake of the world. The first elder of the Sparrow Divine Palace sighed. On behalf of all the suffering people, Li Tianqing thanks the first elder for your help. Li Tianqing hurriedly said. He didn't put on airs at all. In fact, if Li Tianqing had asked the three elders of the Sparrow Divine Palace to go, they wouldn't have dared to refuse. Refuse to go? Aren't you afraid that Li Zongjio will give each of you a slap and knock your heads off when he comes back? You'll know what regret is when that happens. Although Li Zongjio wasn't here now, he would be back sooner or later. However, Li Tianqing didn't use this method of coercion. After all, people should know how to respect each other. This way, they would be more willing to do their best. To be honest, many people didn't expect Li Tianqing to be so courteous despite his noble status. Given Li Tianqing's current status, he should be considered the most powerful person in the three great dynasties. With this son, he could get anything he wanted. If he wanted the world and the country, he could get it with just a word. However, Li Tianqing was willing to be such an otherworldly expert. If something happened, he would be the first to step up. The rest of the people also stood up and expressed their gratitude to the three elders of the Sparrow Divine Palace. At this moment, a ray of light flashed outside the window. Everyone immediately felt that there seemed to be an extra person in the room. Father! Qi Yanran shouted in surprise. Li Tianqing was shocked. At first, he wasn't used to hearing it. However, after taking a closer look, he realized that it was his daughter-in-law. Yanran, you're back? Li Tianqing was obviously a little surprised. However, he was also quite happy to see his daughter-in-law. The parents of both sides had also met last time. For the two of them to have a low-key wedding, in fact, they did not reject it. It was fine as long as the children were happy. There was nothing wrong. At that time, they also served tea to both parties. After the ceremony, Qi Yanran naturally changed the way she addressed Li Tianqing. She's Qi Yanran. Lu Yao looked at Qi Yanran. She was indeed a rare beauty in this world. Only such a person was truly worthy of Li Zongjio. If it were someone else, they naturally wouldn't have such strength and luck. Lu Yao was also clear about this in her heart. She didn't even think of doing anything excessive. She just admired the two of them. Palace Master. When the three elders saw that it was Qi Yanran who came, they were all pleasantly surprised. Lord Yanran. The rest of the people also cupped their hands and bowed to Qi Yanran. Qi Yanran's identity was very impressive. She was Li Zongjio's wife. She could subdue Li Zongjio. Imagine how terrifying Evil Lord's wife would be. Evil Lord's wife. Everyone, there's no need to be so polite. I just passed by the Blackwater Forest. For safety's sake, let's move Sunset City first. Chapter 1572. When everyone saw Qi Yanran's return, they all regarded her as their savior. Once they found Qi Yanran, they would be able to find Li Zongjio. At least, Qi Yanran must know about Li Zongjio's situation. Once they found Evil Lord, what was there to be afraid of? All problems would be easily solved. They had such a good opportunity. Of course, they had to seize it quickly. It was not because they had developed this kind of dependence. It was because the emergence of this disaster had exceeded the scope of what they could bear. They could only seek help from a higher level. Where's Li Zongjio? Why didn't I see him? Li Tianqing asked. After everyone heard this, they felt as if their eyes and ears had been refreshed. They only remembered the title of the evil dominator, but they had never heard of anyone who dared to call Li Zongjiu by his name. It was estimated that in this world, the number of people who dared to call Li Zongjiu by his name could be counted on one hand. He's in seclusion, Qi Yanran said. On the way here, she had already thought of an excuse. After seeing Li Tianqing, she would definitely ask about Li Zongjiu's situation. Although this would deceive Li Tianqing, it was inevitable. It was not good to let the two elders worry. What's more, Li Zongjiu's invincible image had been firmly established in everyone's hearts. If these people knew about the situation, there might be chaos in the world. Oh, so it's like this. This brat is really lucky. I'll definitely teach him a lesson later. Li Tianqing also said. When the masses heard that, they rolled their eyes one after another. That was a little too much. Wasn't he just trying to show off that he could take care of the high and mighty Evil Lord whenever he wanted? Wasn't he just relying on the fact that he was the father of the Evil Lord? If not for the fact that you're his father, who knows how badly you'd be beaten up by the Evil Lord? But this kind of thing was indisputable. Who asked Li Tianqing to be so lucky to have such a good son? The pride on Li Tianqing's face had never been restrained. But business was more important. This flame is so strong that even with my strength, it would be difficult to refine it. It would take a lot of time, and the effect would be minimal. Qi Yanran had already tried it before she came. It would take at least 3 people with the same strength as Qi Yanran to refine the flame at the same time. Or perhaps it was an expert with ice attribute elemental energy of the same level. Only then would it be possible. Since even Qi Yanran couldn't do it, he had to do it alone. In that case, he could only continue to invite the Frost Wun. Li Tianqing also told Qi Yanran about this method. Now that things have come to this, I can only try. Qi Yanran said. 3 elders, stay in the city and help control the volcano. I'm going to Dragon Island. If I don't return in 5 days, immediately tell the White Deer Mansion to find Long Ji and have her return to Dragon Island. Qi Yanran said. Sir. The 3 elders of the Sparrow Divine Palace hurriedly agreed. Luckily, I don't have to go to Dragon Island. With the palace master's strength, these guys on Dragon Island couldn't do anything to her. Therefore, the 3 elders of the Sparrow Divine Palace were not worried. If the 3 of them went, it would be like asking for help. However, if the palace master were to go, it would mean that the request had changed. These people on Dragon Island didn't dare to disobey. Father, I'll go first. Say hello to Mother for me. Qi Yanran said softly. Okay. Be careful. It doesn't matter if you can't find her. The most important thing is that she's fine. Of course, Li Tianqing didn't want Qi Yanran to risk her life. This kind of thing was noble, but it was better to do it under the premise of ensuring one's own safety. Otherwise, the sacrifice would be in vain. After Qi Yanran nodded, her figure turned into a 5-colored light and disappeared. Boom. The crowd only had time to look up from the window. They saw the light that Qi Yanran turned into disappear in the blink of an eye. Seeing that his son and daughter-in-law were so promising, Li Tianqing's heart was filled with relief. But when he heard Qi Yanran's answer just now, in fact, Li Tianqing had already noticed that there seemed to be something wrong. He guessed that Li Zongjiu had gone somewhere. If this brat did something wrong to Qi Yanran, Li Tianqing would definitely give him a good beating. After all, if his son went the wrong way, it would be his fault for not teaching him well. He would be the one to lose face. Qi Yanran had already set off. Li Tianqing and the others also continued to set off. Day by day, the whole continent was restless. They had never thought that there would be so many calamities appearing one after another. This was a huge test for the entire continent, and even more so for those in power like them. This was a real test. Li Tianqing and the others had to withstand such a test as well. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. These words were becoming more and more true. All parties also directly joined forces. Zhou Bachuan led the city guards and kept chopping trees to create an isolation belt. This was to prevent the flames from spreading. At the very least, it could provide some relief. However, this would be a very large project. Although there were many advanced equipment and their own strength, it sped up a lot. The three elders of Sparrow Divine Palace flew directly to the volcanoes and used their cultivation to suppress the boiling and roaring volcanoes. At the very least, they lowered the temperature around the volcanoes and tried to delay as much time as possible. Otherwise, a small spark could ignite the volcanoes in an instant. By then, it would be a real disaster. Evil Forest. Li Zongjio's chaotic energy had entered the final stage of refining. Li Zongjio immediately felt it. Powerful energy was continuously flowing into his body. Boom! Li Zongjio's body was also recovering in this crazy shattering. Finally, he survived the most difficult moment. For Li Zongjio, the most difficult moment was over. It's true? You made me suffer so much. After this round of refinement, Li Zongjio's strength had also condensed. The bones and internal organs in his body had reached a state where they were truly impregnable. It had supreme power, since his cultivation had broken through. Innate Level 7. Previously, Li Zongjio's strength was limited because his strength was only at innate Level 6. No matter what, it was impossible to break through this limit. But it was different now. Li Zongjio's cultivation had broken through completely. All the hardships he had suffered during this period, all of it was shown in his strength. It had to be said, Li Zongjio's strength? His constitution was amazing. He had even surpassed all geniuses and all inheritances. To be able to achieve this level. Besides Li Zongjio, it was hard to find a second person. Above his head, there was a tombstone that was suppressing him. Li Zongjio looked up. Primordial Bell, smash him to pieces. Immediately, Li Zongjio gave the order. The chaos bell in his hand turned into a ray of black light and crashed upward. Boom! A violent vibration resounded in the evil forest. Chapter 1573. Wan Yulan, who was trying her best to recover her cultivation in the tomb, opened her eyes. At this moment, she also opened her eyes and felt the power of the vibration. There was also a trace of disbelief in her eyes. What? Even in her eyes, it was obvious that she did not dare to believe that such a thing could happen. If Li Zongjio wanted to break out of the formation, then there was only one feasible way. This method was to break through on the spot. In such a desperate situation, he made a breakthrough on his own. To anyone else, this was something that was impossible. How long had it been since then? It was easier said than done to break through the Khanate realm so easily. It was impossible to achieve this without 100 or 80 years of cultivation or even 1,000 years of cultivation. Just as Wan Yulan appeared and looked at the formation that she had set up. At this moment, under the formation, there was also a burst of power that was erupting. Stay still! Wan Yulan formed a seal with her hands and released a spell that continued to fall downwards. Boom! The powerful force fell on the tombstone again. However, Wan Yulan had been trying her best to recover from her injuries these days. She was originally fine and only suffered a little damage. But she did not expect that she would be hit hard by a stick some time ago. Furthermore, there was actually an incantation technique hidden on the staff. It was this great void spell that had tormented her for several days. At this moment, she finally got rid of this power. Boom! A black ray of light shot out from the tomb. The chaos bell appeared. Suddenly, an endless golden light fell in all directions like a sharp sword. Swoosh! Swoosh! The golden sword chi also covered the area within a radius of a few thousand meters. Seeing this, Wan Yulan raised her hand and brought the tombstone to her. She did not move at all, allowing the golden light to attack her. Obviously, this attack did not break her defense. This nameless tombstone was obviously a powerful magic treasure. However, at this moment, the chaos bell only released a little of its power to make it easier for Li Zongjio to come out. Your moves are very strange. It seems that you came down from the upper realm. Li Zongjio's figure appeared in midair. He stood in the air. His eyes were filled with endless coldness and murderous intent. She immediately stared at the person in front of her. There was a cold curve at the corner of her mouth. I didn't expect there to be such a treasure. You were able to break through in such a short time. Your physical body must be endlessly talented. Wang Yolan's eyes were bursting with desire. At the same time, they crazily wanted to take Li Zongjiu's body. They actually coveted it to such an extent. Even Wang Yulan herself did not expect Li Zongjiu's body to be so strong. If he cultivated in the upper realm for a few years, he would be able to turn the world upside down. To go directly against the heavens. To attain to Dao to go against the heavens with such powerful strength, it was really enviable and amazing. You'd better return to the tombstone by yourself. Otherwise, I will destroy your soul. Li Zongjiu glanced at the sky. Then, he slowly said to Wang Yulan in front of him, "Do you think you can be my opponent after breaking through?" Wang Yulan laughed disdainfully. "If I can seal you once, I can seal you a second time." Wang Yulan's finger flickered. Suddenly, power gathered on the tombstone in front of her. Lines of runes constantly emerged from the tombstone. Li Zongjiu, however, laughed disdainfully. He stretched out his hand. He shouted, "Sword, come." There seemed to be an extremely terrifying vibration coming from afar. As it vibrated, it came with the power of ice and fire. Boom! This power felt like it could shake the heavens and earth. In an instant, it rushed in front of Li Zongjiu and attacked from behind Wang Yulan. However, Wang Yulan dodged it. This aura. Wang Yulan stared at the sword in front of Li Zongjiu. Her eyes were filled with surprise and shock. How did you become stronger?" Huo Wushuang appeared again. Her ice-blue hair was filled with coldness. And the fiery red dress made people feel the warmth in it. "You're free." When Huo Wushuang saw that Li Zongjiu was fine, she was naturally very excited. However, her expression was quite restrained. However, Li Zongjiu could see that Huo Wushuang was very excited. If it was any other time, she would definitely not have such an expression. "This is the Black Sea Lord's help," Huo Wushuang said, and then pointed at the heart of the Azure Sea on the sword's hilt. The heart of the Azure Sea, this is a top-grade treasure. Li Zongjiu saw that there was an additional heart of the Azure Sea on the Wushuang sword. This was a legendary gem. If it was just a stone, it could easily create an ocean. In the ocean, as long as there was such a gem, it could ensure that it would not dry up for thousands of years. And for an ocean, who knew how many thousands of years it would take to form such a heart of the Azure Sea? It was the representative of the top power of the water attribute. The water of extreme Yin. "I owe her a favor," Li Zongjiu said. Huo Wushuang also nodded. At this moment, she also felt an unprecedentedly powerful strength. If she could completely release her own strength, who knew how terrifying it would be? She was just a sword spirit. To truly release the power of this treasure sword, she still needed to rely on Li Zongjiu. Let's stop talking about old times. Wang Yulan looked at the two people in front of her and was naturally unhappy. They actually started chatting in front of her. This was not putting her in their eyes. From the nameless tombstone, a powerful force suddenly erupted. It was as if a ghostly hand was reaching out from the tombstone. It grabbed towards Li Zongjiu. Li Zongjiu did not dodge. He directly waved the Wushuang sword. The sword contained the strong power of ice and fire, and directly blasted towards the person in front of him. Boom! The power of the sword qi collided. In an instant, it collided with the hand that reached out from the tombstone. The overbearing sword qi instantly broke the hand of the tombstone. Another sword! Li Zongjiu continued to sweep out his sword. Wang Yulan was also shocked and used the tombstone in her hand to block. Then she heard a bang. On the tombstone, there was an additional crack. "Your defense, is this all?" Li Zongjiu's disdainful voice sounded in her ear. Then Wang Yulan's eyes flashed with surprise. Obviously, she did not expect Li Zongjiu to be able to get close to her. Chapter 1574. After the breakthrough, Li Zongjiu's strength naturally increased greatly. At the same time, he had already sensed the person in front of him who had taken Wang Yulan's body. Sure enough, there was a limit to his strength. He was not that unattainable. At his peak, the other party was at most at the level of innate level 9 and had not reached the celestial realm. Li Zongjiu could deduce. The Black Sea Overlord should be at the level of the celestial realm. The person in front of him was now in a state of injury, so he wanted to obtain a strong physical body. Unfortunately, Li Zongjiu's physical cultivation was too strong and could not be subdued so easily. So he needed enough time to prepare. But who knew that when he was preparing, Qi Yanran had disrupted his plan. At the same time, he was hit by Wang Jing's staff and was hit by the Great Emptiness spell. So he could not make any progress. Not long after he came back to his senses, Li Zongjiu in front of him had actually broken through. This was something that Wan Yulan had not expected. The people from the lower realm were truly able to continuously surprise her. Li Zongjiu did not intend to exchange pleasantries with him and listen to his own bloody history. So Li Zongjiu directly slashed at Wan Yulan with his sword. The power of ice and fire intertwined. The surging power surged out. Immediately, a storm was formed. It instantly enveloped Wan Yulan. Under this storm, Wan Yulan also instinctively rushed back. Boom! The tombstone instantly enlarged and immediately formed a wall. It blocked Li Zongjiu's sword energy. Li Zongjiu instantly waved dozens of sword energy in succession. All the sword energy blasted at the same place in unison. The tombstone was actually split into two halves by the powerful sword qi. Boom! This power exploded in an instant. Wan Yulan's eyes revealed a look of horror. How can you be so strong? You're too weak, Li Zongjiu said disdainfully. In the next moment, the primordial bell also fell from the sky. Wan Yulan exclaimed. Despite being locked down by the primordial bell, she was still able to split into two and forcibly escape from the primordial bell. But at the same time, Wan Yulan was also heavily injured. The primordious bell fell to the ground, instantly erupting with turbulent energy. Wan Yulan, who was in front of him, was sent flying. Boom! The latter coughed up a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Li Zongjiu continued to chase after him. For directions, heaven and earthquake. When Li Zongjiu approached, his body seemed to vibrate like all kinds of floor tiles, instantly surrounding Li Zongjiu. A hint of surprise flashed across Li Zongjiu's eyes. It came from all directions like thunder, like an earthquake. This kind of powerful force came crashing down on Li Zongjiu's body. This force made Li Zongjiu unable to distinguish it. Therefore, he could only resist it with his own strength. His body was refined with 3 streaks of chaotic energy. Li Zongjiu also forcibly withstood the opponent's attack. The qi and blood in his body were tumbling, but Li Zongjiu's body could be considered to have withstood it, and the injuries in his body were rapidly recovering. In the blink of an eye, Li Zongjiu's injuries were almost healed. Now, Li Zongjiu's body's recovery ability could be said to be terrifying. It was almost equivalent to an immortal body. I've already said that you're too weak, Li Zongjiu said indifferently. Wan Yulan did not expect that such a powerful curse could not hurt Li Zongjiu at all. Damn it! Wan Yulan suddenly wanted to turn back and escape. Running away was not shameful. After all, with his strength, as long as he recovered to his peak, he would definitely be able to kill Li Zongjiu completely. Why would he be in such a difficult situation? For the latter, this was just a delaying tactic. When he was in the upper realm, he also made a living by running away. In the upper realm, his little bit of strength was actually considered nothing at all. Trying to run? Li Zongjiu snorted coldly and rushed forward in an instant. With his own speed and the power of the Chaos Bell, he quickly caught up with Wan Yulan. Boy, if you continue to chase me, I'll self-destruct this body. Wan Yulan turned back and said. He wanted to threaten Li Zongjiu with Wan Yulan's life. However, the moment he turned back to look at Li Zongjiu, he met with Li Zongjiu's eyes. Soon, a force directly poured into Wan Yulan's body. Illusion. The soul hidden in Wan Yulan's body immediately became alert, but it was too late. Li Zongjiu had already found an opportunity. He used his mental strength to blast the soul out. Wan Yulan's body fell down. The unparalleled sword swayed and caught the unconscious Wan Yulan. Brat, you've ruined my plan. Just you wait. The power of the black soul let out a sharp cry. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. Obviously, It had used some kind of divine ability. Li Zongjio did not panic and just smiled faintly. The primordial bell in the distance was hidden behind a tombstone. Suddenly, there seemed to be a force pouring in from the tombstone. The tombstone suddenly came to life. It was just that this well-hidden tombstone obviously did not expect that it would be destroyed as soon as it was restored. It was directly covered by the primordial bell. Bang! It was completely covered by the primordial bell. It was like a birdcage. It had long been waiting for the rabbit. What? The black soul was obviously stunned. It did not expect Li Zongjio to have such a backup plan. How did he find out about it? Li Zongjio's figure appeared from the primordial bell. Do you really think that everyone is as stupid as you? With your little ability, this sovereign has already seen through it. Li Zongjio said without any trace of politeness. The reason why this guy needed to continuously seize bodies was because his physical body had already been destroyed. Therefore, after being forced out of Wan Yolan's body, he definitely needed to find a place to store his soul. And according to Li Zongjio's previous observation, this black soul must have been stored on the tombstone that fell from the sky. Sure enough, when it fell down, after escaping from Wan Yolan's body, it had to find a new place to stay. And this tombstone was obviously left here by Li Zongjio on purpose. He had already discovered it. After the latter went into it, he directly suppressed and captured it with the primordial bell. At this time, this guy naturally did not have any temper. The escape method that the latter was good at? Li Zongjio obviously could not see through it. But as long as he landed, he could easily catch it. Do you think that a mere semi-finished immortal treasure can trap me? Even if you trap me, once I recover my strength, I will definitely kill you. The black soul shrank into a ball. It directly hid in the tombstone and did not show itself. Since the latter was able to escape from the upper realm, he obviously had powerful means. As long as he did not show himself, Li Zongjio naturally could not do anything to him. Of course, this was only his own idea. After capturing this guy, Li Zongjio naturally did not bother with this guy. His figure retreated from the primordial bell. Now that the primordial bell had been completely refined by Li Zongjio, his every move in the primordial bell was also under Li Zongjio's control. It was completely impossible for him to disappear quietly. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to deal with him. First, he helped Wan Yulan up. Obviously, during this period, Wan Yulan must have suffered a lot. In any case, she was a guest of his White Deer Mansion. Of course, Li Zongjio would not leave her in the lurch. At the very least, they were all Li Zongjio's friends. If Li Zongjio had negotiated with this mysterious black soul, it would have been disadvantageous for Wan Yulan. The most effective method would be to take him down without saying a word. Everything would be fine. Huo Wushuang placed Wan Yulan on the ground. Li Zongjio came to Wan Yulan's side and checked her pulse. He also found that Wan Yulan was fine. Perhaps, because of this, he could even gain a blessing in disguise. The power of the black soul was really special. This was because he did not want to directly take over Wan Yulan's body. He only wanted to borrow it temporarily. After all, the latter really cared about Li Zongjio's body. However, during this period of time, the cultivation power was concentrated in Wan Yulan's body. It was equivalent to directly strengthening Wan Yulan's physique. This was because as long as Wan Yulan's strength was strong, he could also use more power. Now, the black soul was chased away by Li Zongjio. The power from before was also left in Wan Yulan's body. Li Zongjio also used a stream of elemental energy to enter Wan Yulan's body and woke Wan Yulan up. In just a moment, Wan Yulan opened her eyes. When she saw Li Zongjio, the first thing she said was, "Quick, Miss Yanran was injured by me." Obviously, during that period of time, Wan Yulan was also aware of the situation in the outside world. What? Li Zongjio's eyes suddenly turned cold. The cold air on his body exploded. "Tell me the situation in detail." After Li Zongjio calmed down, he said, "The killing intent just now was not targeted at Wan Yulan, but the mysterious black soul in the primordial bell. Even so, Wan Yulan still felt an extremely frightening and threatening power. Chapter 1575. If the momentum was stronger, Wan Yulan even had a feeling that she would be killed by Li Zongjiu's momentum. After that, Wan Yulan also told him the situation in her memory. After listening, Li Zongjiu also breathed a sigh of relief. As for the person who attacked, Wan Yulan only mentioned a fat man with a stick. Li Zongjiu knew who the person was. In Wan Yulan's hands, there was actually a curse seal left behind. If Wang Jing attacked, then there should be no problem. Let's find them first. Li Zongjiu said. When Wan Yulan learned that Qi Yanran was fine, she also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, if Qi Yanran was injured by her, then Wan Yulan would also be injured. She would definitely fall into incomparable self-blame. Fortunately, according to Li Zongjiu's analysis of the situation, Qi Yanran was fine. Li Zongjiu had experienced the power of the Bluebird platform. With the strength of the Black Soul, it was still impossible to destroy the Bluebird platform. As long as the Bluebird platform was still there, then Qi Yanran must be safe. At least an expert of the celestial being realm was needed. So Li Zongjiu was also quite clear. After this kind of thing happened, Li Zongjiu also went back to Luoxia City first. There was also an intelligence station of the White Deer Mansion in Luoxia City. At least he could know about Qi Yanran's situation and Wang Jing's situation. Wan Yulan also expressed her apologies. She wanted to go with them, at least after seeing that Qi Yanran was fine, then her tense heart could really be relieved. Li Zongjiu was naturally worried. Although he believed in Qi Yanran's strength, he could really be relieved after seeing it with his own eyes. My strength, how did it increase so much? During this process, Wan Yulan unexpectedly discovered that her strength had increased tremendously. Although he had already stepped into the Supreme Being realm previously, he was still a Supreme Being. However, in just a few days, Wan Yulan was already close to the level of an 8th grade Supreme Being. From this point, it could be seen that the Heavenly Monarch's actions were unfathomable. The people of the upper realm could do a lot of things, and even the miracles they could achieve were beyond imagination. For them, increasing the strength of a supremacy was as simple as Li Zongjiu increasing the strength of a Yuan king or a Yuan emperor. In Wan Yulan's eyes, this was simply a huge surprise, but in reality, in their eyes, it was just a casual enlightenment. Wan Yulan was pleasantly surprised. Since he was given such a good opportunity, he naturally had to grasp it. After that, he continued to increase his strength. Naturally, it would be faster. Although it was very dangerous at that time, and he could have died at any time. However, thanks to Li Zongjiu, his life was saved. Otherwise, he would definitely have lost his life in the process. Once the mysterious Black Soul's strength increased, it would definitely devour the vitality in Wan Yulan's body first. In this way, it would be difficult for Wan Yulan to be resurrected. If Li Zongjiu did not take action, Wan Yulan would only have a dead end in the end. When Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran flew into the boundary of the Blackwater Forest, immediately, they felt a heat wave hit them. Immediately, both of them had a confused expression in their eyes. They looked at each other and saw the scene in front of them. They were shocked to find that there was a huge fire in the Blackwater Forest that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. The fire was burning fiercely. There is such a fire in the forest? Why didn't the high-level meta beast take action? Wan Yulan said. The appearance of the fire was strange. The range of the fire had expanded to 1,500 miles. At a glance, there was a real sea of fire in front of them. It was boundless. It connected heaven and earth. Just by looking at it, it felt as if the whole world was being burned. Wan Yulan tried to take action. She tried to use her own meta-force to suppress the fire. He wanted to use his own elemental energy to directly extinguish these flames. This way, she would be able to extinguish the fire. However, when Wan Yulan's meta-force came into contact with the fire, they were burned to ashes by the flames. What? This fire is actually so domineering. Li Zongjiu naturally saw Wan Yulan's attempt. Obviously, Li Zongjiu was surprised by the other party's strength. Even if he did not take action, he could feel the strength of the fire. Therefore, Li Zongjiu did not take any action rashly. Let's go back to the city first. Li Zongjio knew that the fire would not be extinguished in a short time. At the same time, Li Zongjio was worried that it would be really dangerous if the fire spread to Luoxia City. How many things had happened on this continent during the time he was trapped? Therefore, Li Zongjio and Lan Xuanyu forcibly broke through the fire and rushed towards Luoxia City. During this process, the unparalleled sword also released a blue sea force to protect the two of them. Although the fire was strong, it did not hurt the two of them at all. Li Zongjio also realized that there seemed to be a person trying his best to hide his aura in the fire. It was as if these flames had only appeared along with his breathing. It didn't even feel as if he had deliberately released the power of these flames. Li Zongjio could feel the strength of the other party. There was also a trace of seriousness in his eyes. This was because the aura was even stronger than that of the mysterious black soul. There must be some kind of trouble that caused these things to happen one after another. Otherwise, these things wouldn't have happened for no reason. Moreover, they appeared in groups. It would be fine if one of them appeared. There was another one here. Moreover, there might also be strange people appearing in other places. This made Li Zongjio very confused. For the time being, Li Zongjio didn't look for trouble with the person in the raging fire. The Blackwater Forest was burned down, but if he dared to make a move against the Luoxia City, then Li Zongjio would definitely not spare him. However, looking at the current situation, it was obvious that the fire was bound to spread to Luoxia City. Before that, he had to get rid of them. When Li Zongjio and Li Zongjio passed through the fire, they finally saw Luoxia City hundreds of miles away. At this moment, there were more than a dozen giant warships around Luoxia City. They were spraying something similar to ice cubes outside. When these powers appeared, they would be able to lower the temperature better. Only by reducing the temperature could they prevent the fire from entering Luoxia City. However, these flying ships were already doing their best. Now, Luoxia City could naturally be left. However, Li Tianqing chose to stay. To deal with the situation in front of him. He wanted to help the mainland resist the fire in front of him and do his best to stop it. These ships are quite interesting. Li Zongjio saw the flying ships spraying ice cubes. The ice cubes flew down like a series of waterfalls. The surrounding trees had been cut down. There were even many trenches dug to prevent the fire from spreading. However, the fire was too big to be stopped. Li Zongjio and Li Zongjio flew into Luoxia City. Qing Shilong was also sitting here. When he saw Li Zongjio and Li Zongjio, he was also surprised. Master! Li Zongjio landed in front of Qing Shilong. These days, Qing Shilong had been monitoring the situation of the fire in front of him. However, they also felt rather bored. Since the fire couldn't be extinguished, it was better to run away. When he saw Li Zongjio coming, Qing Shilong was also very surprised. Where's my father? He's in the City Lord Mansion. Li Zongjio and Wan Yulan also rushed here. In the City Lord Mansion, Li Tianqing and the others were also having a meeting. Basically, during this time, these people were also discussing things. Father. Li Zongjio appeared in the meeting. He appeared in front of everyone. When they saw Li Zongjio appear, they were all pleasantly surprised. Evil Lord! Evil Lord! You're finally here? Everyone cried out in alarm. Li Tianqing also spent a lot of energy during this time. After all, when there was no one above, he had to take over. Fortunately, Li Tianqing was more or less experienced in this aspect. The overall situation was not a mess. If it were someone else, they might have already run away. You brat, you're finally here. When Li Tianqing saw Li Zongjio and Wan Yulan coming together, his eyelids suddenly twitched. Wasn't this brat in seclusion? Why was he with Miss Wan? Miss Wan is also here. Please take a seat. However, after thinking about it, it was normal. After all, the Heike dynasty was on the opposite side of the Blackwater Forest. At present, the fire was only burning here. However, sooner or later, it would burn to the Heike dynasty. Therefore, it was normal to find Li Zongjio to come together. Therefore, Li Tianqing also introduced the situation of the fire to them, up until now. Everything that had happened. Yen Ran went to Dragon Island? How many days has she been there? Li Zongjio heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that Qi Yanran was fine and had gone to Dragon Island. However, he also knew that there was a frost dragon on Dragon Island. However, Li Zongjio also knew that this frost dragon was not to be trifled with. It could be said that this frost dragon seemed to have existed since the birth of Dragon Island. It was very, very ancient. On this Dragon Island, it was already a kind of otherworldly feeling. How many days has she been there? Today is the third day. Chapter 1576. With Qi Yanran's strength, she wouldn't even need 3 days to go back and forth. She must have encountered some obstacles. I'll go to Dragon Island first. The fire here isn't a big problem for the time being. Anyway, everything that should be burned has been burned. Wushuang, you stay here. Li Zongjio left the Wushuang sword behind. After all, Wushuang's current strength was equivalent to the existence of the innate realm, and with the support of the heart of the blue sea, with the addition of the power of water and fire, there was an absolute balance between the power of water and fire. With such strength, it was naturally not a problem. Huo Wushuang was even more effective than him in stopping the fire. Huo Wushuang nodded. The rest of the people were quite surprised when they saw Evil Lord turn into a stunning beauty in the blink of an eye. There were many benefits to becoming a top expert. There were beauties lingering around every day. This kind of time was quite blissful in the eyes of others. You also stay here to help, Li Zongjio said to Wan Yulan. Wan Yulan replied. Now that she knew that Qi Yanran was fine, Wan Yulan was naturally relieved. Because it had been half a month since Wan Yulan injured Qi Yanran. Since she was here, it meant that her injury had been healed. Just when Li Zongjio was about to go to Dragon Island. Suddenly, outside the city, more than 400 miles to the west, there was a violent explosion. At the same time, a heat wave came rapidly. Boom! Even the few giant flying ships in the sky started to sway due to the wind. Oh no, the volcano erupted. Someone said. Li Tianqing's face suddenly changed. Oh no, Miss Lu Yao from the Thousand Taste Herb Hall is still investigating the situation in the volcano area. Li Tianqing's face immediately changed. After all, Lu Yao was quite a capable person. She was also a very important person to Luoxia City. While everyone was watching, Li Zongjio's figure had disappeared from where he was. When Li Tianqing spoke, Li Zongjio's mental energy caught sight of a few figures in the center of the explosion. So, he moved without hesitation. Those who took the risk to get close to the volcano at this time must be to stop the fire. At this moment, Lu Yao and the others were also adding powder to the extinct volcano, trying to neutralize the power in it. This way, even if it exploded, the power could be weakened. At least that was what Lu Yao thought. There was no other way. Once it was unleashed, its might would be able to instantly cover 100 miles. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to avoid it. All the people and meta beasts in the vicinity of the volcanic area would be wiped out by this force. Lu Yao couldn't bear to see such misery and suffering. Even before that, Lu Yao had also used her own power to treat the small animals that had escaped from the forest. She had even treated a large number of injured meta beasts. They were all treated by Lu Yao. This fire not only had a great impact on the human race, but it also had a greater impact on the small animals in the forest. This Blackwater forest was their home. But now it was burned to such a state. At this moment, Lu Yao and the others were quickly escaping to the back. It's 20 hours faster than we expected. This is only the first one. There are other volcanoes that are in danger of erupting. The first one was just a warning. The second one is the real eruption. Lu Yao shouted loudly. However, at this moment, the volcanic ash that was falling from the sky like countless flying blades was rapidly spreading towards them. Boom! An expert from the Thousand Taste Herb Hall also put up his own defense. He protected Lu Yao and the others in it. He had told Lu Yao not to come here. But Lu Yao was very experienced in the geological exploration of volcanoes. If it were someone else, they wouldn't be able to find anything. So, Lu Yao came here personally. She didn't expect such a big thing to happen. Miss, let's go. Take this document with you. My analysis just now has been recorded in it. Take me with you. Or you can't leave, Lu Yao said. At the same time, she threw a crystal into the hands of the 1,000-taste herb hall expert. Miss, don't talk nonsense. This is an order. The expert nodded with tears in his eyes. Finally, he turned around and flew out. During the first round of eruption, they had already lost 2 people. They had sacrificed 2 people. If they didn't leave now, all the efforts of Miss would be wasted. The second round of eruption came. The volcanic ash was like meteorites from outer space, falling down rapidly. The power attached to it was enough to devour all life. Lu Yao turned around and looked at the volcanic ash. It was like a black cloud, but also like a huge wave. In short, it was very terrifying. She clenched her hands tightly, waiting for death to come. There wouldn't be any pain to die under the volcanic ash. Because in a few milliseconds, one's body would become part of the volcanic ash and be washed away. It would be smaller than the tiniest grain of sand in the world. However, after waiting for a while, Lu Yao still felt that her body seemed to be intact. When she opened her eyes again, she found that she was already high in the sky, and all the volcanic ash was under her feet. Looking down from this angle, it was obvious that this scene was even more shocking. Don't you know how to run? Are you an idiot? Li Zongjiu's voice sounded in Lu Yao's ears. When Lu Yao heard this voice, her body trembled. She was so shocked that she couldn't believe her eyes. When she turned her head, she happened to see Li Zongjiu's resolute side profile. Miss, I was caught by Evil Lord when I was running halfway. The expert from 1,000 Flavors Herb Hall said awkwardly. With his cultivation of the Origin Emperor realm, he was pulled up by Li Zongjiu as if he was a chick. He couldn't resist at all. In fact, he almost couldn't escape. The power of the volcanic ash was enough to destroy any Origin Emperor realm expert and cause their bodies to fester. Even a Supremacy realm expert couldn't resist it. This was the power of heaven and earth. It wasn't something that could be resisted with just a few decades of cultivation. The volcanic ash had been deposited for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. If it had intelligence, it would be a monster that could destroy everything. Li Zongjiu, why are you here? Lu Yao looked at Li Zongjiu and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. When Li Zongjiu heard this voice, he also felt the same. He couldn't help but look back at Lu Yao. You've grown up. Lu Yao didn't expect Li Zongjiu's first sentence to be this. What did he mean by grown up? Back then in Northern Medicine City, you were just a little girl who pretended to be mature. Li Zongjiu's next sentence directly cleared Lu Yao's doubts. And the content of his words made Lu Yao's heart tremble. Northern Medicine City. Why did he remember it so clearly? It had been a few years. Why did Li Zongjiu still remember such a small matter back then? Back then, Li Zongjiu had barged into Northern Medicine City directly. He had even killed the city lord of Northern Medicine City in the end. Li Zongjiu was only able to leave under the cover of 1,000 Flavors Herb Hall. Who would have thought that the impulsive kid back then had become a top existence in the continent in the blink of an eye? With such a cultivation, he could still remember such a small matter back then. You still remember? But Lu Yao didn't appear back then. Although everything was instructed by Lu Yao, the one who actually did it was Lu Manxian. Now, Lu Manxian had become one of the pillars of 1,000 Flavors Herb Hall. She had put in a lot of effort for 1,000 Flavors Herb Hall. I knew it long ago. Otherwise, do you think your 1,000 Flavors Herb Hall would be able to reach such a scale today? Li Zongjiu said. Li Zongjiu naturally wouldn't forget the kindness back then. He remembered all those who had helped him along the way. As for his former enemies, their fates were naturally very obvious. All of them were buried in the ground. How dare you? Lu Yao naturally didn't expect this. Lu Yao originally thought that Li Zongjiu didn't know of her existence at all. He didn't even remember her at all. But who would have thought that Li Zongjiu was actually? He had been paying attention to her for such a long time. It was simply, Lu Yao herself couldn't believe it. She didn't even know how to react for a moment. Why did you come to this place? Li Zongjiu asked. Only then did Lu Yao come back to her senses. Business was more important. These volcanoes are about to erupt. Once all of them erupt, the destructive power won't be inferior to this fire disaster. Hurry up and stop it, Lu Yao said immediately. Lu Yao didn't need to say more. Li Zongjio had already seen through it. Li Zongjio waved his hand casually. The chaos bell suddenly grew bigger. In the end, the chaos bell was so big that when it fell, it directly covered the volcanic crater. With a loud boom, the crater of the volcano was completely engulfed by it. Li Zongjio's voice fell. Suddenly, the scene of magma in the volcano surging into the chaos bell could be heard. Chapter 1577. Li Zongjio had already absorbed the power of primal chaos in the world within the primordial bell. Therefore, it could be said that the primordial bell was an endless space. Therefore, in this space, it was possible to carry things without any restraint. Li Zongjio had also divided the world inside the chaotic bell into several layers. The giant dragon tribe that he had captured previously was placed in the middle layer. However, Li Zongjio had also placed the tombstone that he had captured previously at the lowest layer. There was still a mysterious black soul hidden in the tombstone. If Li Zongjio wanted to deal with the black soul, it would take a lot of effort. Then, Li Zongjio directly absorbed the magma of the volcano, which had accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years, and poured it all into the chaotic bell. Immediately, the boiling hot and dense magma submerged the tombstone. The mysterious black soul in the chaotic bell was shocked when he felt the magma coming towards him. A soul like him was most afraid of the scorching energy between heaven and earth. Now, the black soul was attacking him. This caused the mysterious black soul to scream. Li Zongjio did it on purpose. Previously, the black soul had used Wan Yolan's body to injure Qi Yanran. This debt naturally had to be settled properly. Now, it was time to collect some interest. After that, he would teach this guy a lesson. After a while, the amount of magma in the volcano naturally decreased by a lot. Li Zongjio did not absorb all the magma. In that case, the volcano would dry up and become a very ordinary mountain in the future. This was too tragic for a volcano. Therefore, Li Zongjio gave it a chance to continue living. In the future, when it accumulated to a certain extent, it could still become a new volcano. This is settled? Lu Yao and the others were in disbelief. Lu Yao had spent a lot of time and effort in order to calculate and collect a lot of data. It took a lot of effort, but in the end, with Li Zongjio's help, the volcano was easily dealt with. There was no longer any danger of an eruption because the storage capacity of the magma was no longer enough for an eruption. Of course it's difficult for you, Li Zongjio said calmly. When Lu Yao saw Li Zongjio's expression, she thought that if it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't beat him, she would have given Li Zongjio a vicious punch to his face so that he could continue to show off. It was truly infuriating. In the past few days, it could be said that they had gone through a lot of hardships before finally accomplishing these things. It was truly shocking. To be able to do this was already very good. However, they didn't expect Li Zongjio to solve the crisis of a volcano in less than a few minutes. There are 4 more volcanoes. You should also take them. Otherwise, they will also be in danger of erupting. Lu Yao was already too tired to complain. If she had known that it was so easy to solve these problems with strength, she wouldn't have spent so much effort. It would have been better if she had dug out Li Zongjio earlier. In fact, Li Zongjio himself only had such strength because he had completely refined the chaos bell. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of time to absorb the power of the volcanoes. In order not to waste time, Li Zongjio also quickly rushed into the distance and absorbed the power of the remaining 4 volcanoes into the world of the chaos bell. All of it was poured into Onyx Soul in the tombstone. In this way, Onyx Soul was also bathed in the endless magma. It was also suffering from the pain of the raging fire at every moment. Li Zongjio even compressed the sea of magma continuously until it was only 1/10 of its original size. With that, the might of the flames also increased. They were 10 times stronger than before. Although it couldn't cause any substantial damage to the ladder, such a powerful magma would definitely consume the ladder's strength. This also caused the latter to be in a state of exhaustion all the time, which would naturally cause a certain amount of trouble for the latter. The hidden dangers of the 5 volcanoes had been eliminated, which at least reduced the danger by a lot. Lu Yao also heaved a sigh of relief. Although it seemed like she had been wasting her time for so long, everything would be fine as long as these volcanoes didn't erupt. Go back by yourselves. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Li Zongjio casually left the 2 of them by the roadside. The other person was an primitive emperor expert, so it wouldn't be difficult for him to return to the city. Therefore, Li Zongjio didn't waste any more time and directly flew in the direction of Dragon Island. If these fools on Dragon Island dared to do anything to harm Qi Yanran, Li Zongjio would have already made up his mind to directly overturn Dragon Island. Looking at Li Zongjio's disappearing figure, the 2 of them were obviously very surprised. I've always heard of Evil Lord's achievements in the past. Now I finally know. Lord Evil Lord should be called a god. The primitive emperor expert beside Lu Yao couldn't help but say. As for how strong he was, you could only feel it when you were facing him. Who would have thought that Li Zongjio's strength was actually so terrifying? This was the power of 5 volcanoes. Just like that, the power of the magma stored in these volcanoes was easily absorbed. This guy. Lu Yao's thoughts were also in a mess. She had never thought that Li Zongjio had already known about her. This caused Lu Yao to feel rather uneasy in her heart. She couldn't believe it at all. Therefore, Lu Yao's heart was also in a mess. She didn't know what was going through her mind. Let's go. Anyway, the situation here has been solved, Lu Yao said. The 2 of them walked in the direction of Luoxia City. Dragon Island. Qi Yanran had never been to Dragon Island. Last time, Li Zongjio rushed to Dragon Island in order to chase after the devouring Yuan clan. Therefore, Qi Yanran spent more than half a day to find Dragon Island. When Qi Yanran came to Dragon Island, clearly, the Dragon Island had become more vigilant after the previous calamity. Even the various dragon tribes had joined forces once again. The Dragon Penitentiary had also directly subdued all the major dragon clans on Dragon Island. It didn't continue to give them freedom anymore. Because it gave them too much freedom, these people always thought that they were going to heaven. Therefore, the Dragon Penitentiary announced that it would directly rule the Dragon Clan and command all the dragons. If anyone was disobedient and refused to listen to advice, they would all be thrown into prison. After the previous experience, there was already a trend of this happening. Fortunately, the Dragon Penitentiary only did this because it wanted to unify the power of the Dragon Clan. When Qi Yanran came, she was also directly faced with the tenacious resistance and attacks of the Dragon Clan. The 3 wardens of the Dragon Penitentiary came in person, but they still couldn't defeat this human. However, Qi Yanran didn't kill them. She just asked the Dragon Clan about the whereabouts of the Frost Dragon. After a fight, the Dragon Clan found that even if all of them combined, they were no match for Qi Yanran. Finally, after a conversation, they actually just found out. Qi Yanran was the wife of the Evil Lord. No wonder she had such terrifying strength. The wardens of the Dragon Penitentiary almost began to doubt themselves. They thought that the human clan had reached the stage of eruption of masters, and any one of them could destroy the entire Dragon Clan. Since she was the wife of the Evil Lord, it naturally made sense. After all, the Evil Lord was the one who directly destroyed the Dragon Clan a few years ago. However, in the end, he had already wasted 2 whole days. Fortunately, after knowing the identity of the wife of the Evil Lord, the warden of the Dragon Penitentiary also personally took Qi Yanran to find the Frost Dragon. However, the Frost WM had obviously given him the cold shoulder again. In this endless range of icebergs, even the Dragon Clan was here. They also felt a kind of bone-piercing cold. Only the Ice Blast WMs could cultivate and survive in such an environment. If it were the other dragons, they would have to admit defeat immediately. If the Frost Dragon Clan didn't want to show up, even the warden of the Dragon Penitentiary couldn't do anything. I seem to have heard that the Frost Dragon Clan has a rule that they will only show up if someone can break their frost formation. The warden explained to Qi Yanran. Although it was just a rumor, it was true. But this was not far from the truth. Anyway, they hadn't seen the Ice Blast WRM for so many years. Furthermore, it was said that the Frost Dragon clan was extremely terrifying. They were existences akin to the demonic dragons. They were not the dark kind. Instead, they were born to belong to the demon dragons and were born to be bad people. That was why there was such a rule. Last time, the guy who called himself the evil dragon god didn't dare to provoke the Frost Dragon. Because as long as you didn't look for him, he wouldn't show up. In this way, there would be no problem. Where is the formation? Qi Yanran asked. One more step, and you will be in the range of the Frost Formation. The Great Frost Formation did exist, but whether or not they could find the Frost Dragon after breaking it was a legend. On the Dragon Island, there was only this glacier in front of them. If there was no glacier here, the Frost Dragon would most likely be dead. Chapter 1578. The head warden of the Dragon Penitentiary watched Qi Yanran walk into the frost array. A gust of cold wind blew past Qi Yanran's back and covered her figure. She completely disappeared. She entered the array. Even the head warden of the Dragon Penitentiary could not do anything about what happened next. He could only pray that Qi Yanran would come out of the frost array as soon as possible. At the very least, he hoped that she would not die in the frost array. Otherwise, how could he explain when the evil lord came knocking on his door in the future? With that being's temperament, he would probably overturn the entire Dragon Island without saying a word. The head warden had no doubt that Li Zongjio could do such a thing. I heard from Long Ji that the reason why the evil lord came to Dragon Island and caused trouble for the Devouring Yuan clan was because the Devouring Yuan clan injured the evil lord's wife, said the second warden. Although they were very angry about the fact that Li Zongjio had a dragon soul, they were still very angry. But there was nothing he could do. His strength was too strong, and there was no way he could compete with him. Therefore, the ancestral behest was thrown to the back of his mind. He could not sacrifice the lives of the entire dragon clan on Dragon Island just because of the ancestral behest. After all, wasn't the ancestral behest set up to better protect the dragon clan? If he did that, it would definitely bring disaster to Dragon Island. This was probably what the ancestors of the dragon clan did not want to see. The main reason was that Long Ji often came to report. She said that Li Zongjio's strength had improved by leaps and bounds, and that he was no longer competitive. During this process, he no longer had the mentality to catch up. Who would have thought that there would be such a rare genius in the human clan? At least for now, it seemed that it was the right choice to let Long Ji go down and establish a friendly relationship with Li Zongjio. If anything happened, Long Ji would be there to ease the tension between them. Then, the matter would naturally be resolved. There was no need to start a fight right from the start. This time, when he fought with Qi Yanran, he also found out. Qi Yanran alone was enough to beat the entire Dragon Island. If the evil lord himself came, how powerful would he be? Just the thought of it made him sweat profusely. Time flew. The two wardens of the Draconic Penitentiary were also guarding outside the glacier, but Qi Yanran seemed to have disappeared directly. He didn't see anyone in front of him. He should have entered a secret realm. In other words, it was another independent space. That was the only way he could disappear in the blink of an eye. No wonder the Ice Blast Dragon didn't show up when the Dragon Island had such a big change. It was because the Ice Blast Dragon was actually sealed in another space, and the Dragon Island was just an entrance. Just as the two of them were waiting, suddenly, a loud boom was heard. Someone seemed to have fallen behind him. The two of them turned around and saw the third warden of the Draconic Penitentiary thrown to the ground. Boom! Third brother. Who beat you up like this? The two of them saw the bruises on the third brother's face. He must have been beaten up. Who was so arrogant? The two of them were about to fly into a rage. Tell me quickly. I'll take the dragon tribe to destroy his whole family. The hot-tempered second warden roared. He couldn't wait to avenge the third brother. It's me. A man's voice was heard. When the first warden and second warden of the Draconic Penitentiary heard the voice, they felt as if someone had poked their spines. Instantly, they stood up straight. When they turned around, they saw Li Zongjio with a calm face and a small black hammer in his hand. Evil Lord. Lord Evil Sovereign, it's been a long time since we last met. I was just speaking casually just now. The second warden said hurriedly and kicked the third brother at the same time. He knew that this big devil was here, but he didn't even greet him. Instead, he was still pretending. Where's my woman? Li Zongjio asked calmly. When he arrived, Li Zongjio didn't find anyone else. He went straight to the third warden and beat him up without saying a word. Then, the third warden obediently brought Li Zongjio here. Is it Her Highness Qi Yanran? She entered the Grand Frost Formation yesterday to look for the colossal frost dragon. The first warden reacted quickly. He said directly. After all, looking at Li Zongjio's appearance, he seemed to be very anxious. At this time, if he was half a beat slower, something might happen. Li Zongjio turned around and looked at the glacier in front of him. With Li Zongjio's cultivation, of course, he could see the spirit boundary on the glacier in front of him at a glance. What's the matter with the frost dragon? Li Zongjio was already a little impatient. Why are you so wishy-washy when I ask you to do something? You can't even do something small. Now, this frost dragon dared to act like a big shot in front of him. Come out when I ask you to. You even dare to do these things. When I catch you, I'll definitely give you a good beating, you Ice Blast W. The head warden quickly explained the frost dragon's story to him. Li Zongjio sneered after hearing it. Not to mention the intensity of the fire below. As long as I, Evil Lord, call you, you have to fucking show up. Don't act like a big shot here. I'd like to see what's so great about this frost dragon that you have to break the formation to come out. Li Zongjio immediately leaped into the air. The 10,000 dragon hammer in his hand summoned the heavenly thunder. Instantly, it blasted towards the bottom of the glacier. The glacier in front of him also exploded in an instant. The three wardens of the dragon prison also saw Li Zongjio's terrifying attack. The thunder and lightning he summoned just now could easily smash them into pieces. In fact, the three wardens of the dragon prison were only in the absolute saint realm. But Li Zongjio had already entered the higher heaven realm. His cultivation was even higher than Qi Yanran's. Qi Yanran, who was only in the higher heaven realm, was able to smash a dragon, let alone Li Zongjio. This time, his attack was even more earth-shattering. The terrifying power that erupted from his attack also made the three wardens gasp in amazement. If such power fell on them, they would be shattered into pieces. Just like this glacier, he would be blasted into pieces. He really had no temper at all. The three wardens were also extremely shocked in each other's eyes. At least when they were fighting against Qi Yanran, they still had the mentality to fight. But when facing Li Zongjio, they had no such mentality at all. They couldn't even muster up the will to resist. In front of such a peak-level expert, the great power displayed by him had convinced everyone. Li Zongjio's power was enough to repel the power of the spirit formation and prevent it from absorbing him. After all, the strength of the person who set up the spirit formation was not much stronger than Li Zongjio. If you still don't show up, then come again. Li Zongjio blasted down several more thunderbolts in a row and furiously struck down. Rumble! The sound of continuous explosions rose and fell one after another. Above the entire glacier, there seemed to be many forces that were erupting one after another. Such a terrifying momentum was like a giant beast crashing through the thick and solid ice. But this power was created by Li Zongjio. It was as if a giant was holding an ice hammer in its hand and was easily smashing the ice in front of it into pieces. The whole process was extremely easy. The glacier in front of them was all shattered by Li Zongjio. After that, the three wardens retreated one after another. They couldn't believe what was happening in front of them. And they were also forced to retreat by the cold air released by the dragon. If the frost dragon really wanted to speak, it was almost the real ancestor of the dragon clan. It was the group that created the dragon island. Later on, the frost dragon went into hiding. It would only appear when the dragon clan was truly facing a calamity. As for the so-called Great Frost Array, it was just an excuse to not let others disturb it. Was that why he had set up such a barrier on the glacier as well? Unless you could defeat the frost dragon, it would be difficult for you to rush out of the great frost array. Li Zongjio naturally saw through all this. What a bullshit array. After I teach you a lesson, I'll let you tell me about this great frost array. Boom. Li Zongjio blasted the glacier into smithereens. The other party still didn't appear. Li Zongjio summoned the chaotic origin bell. It absorbed the power of the magma from the 5 volcanoes. All of them were poured out directly from the ground. Boom. The magma immediately fell towards the bottom of the glacier, turning the frozen glacier into a land of blazing magma. Immediately, a giant beast from ancient times seemed to open its eyes in the depths of the glacier. In an instant, a ferocious and ancient aura was awakened. Immediately, an earth-shattering aura swept out. Boom! The surging power was released without stopping. With the appearance of the cold air, the power of the magma from the 5 volcanoes was easily extinguished. The 3 wardens opened their eyes wide. Judging from the situation, it seemed that the frost dragon was about to appear. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.